One. Well, yeah, yeah. Good morning, everybody. Welcome out to the podcast. This should be fun. I think Tom's going to start out here for just a minute, and
Yeah, I'm
we're going
here.
to go back and forth here. Oh, awesome, excellent deal. I'll
So
let you
sorry
take
I
over
had to
here.
get the yeah. Good morning, Shade.
Morning.
Hey, I'm just gonna take the first couple of minutes, you guys. We got a lot of exciting stuff to cover with you today. There's a lot of good information we're gonna be going through. I think you guys are gonna like it. We're gonna talk so first of all, some introduction, some news. We're gonna talk about uh, some of the pre-sale stuff in New York, tax lien deeds and risk. And then I'm going to come on a little bit later and talk about a lot of the strategies as far as exit strategies that we're utilizing in 2026 and go through some great things there. And, also show you some deals that we're currently working on. So some of that stuff is kind of fun. Just show you some renovations, what's happening, kind of some of the numbers on some of these things and opportunities you guys should be taking advantage of out there in the real estate world. So there's so much that I'd like to cover with you. A couple of things that I would say getting into the training today is I would be really thinking about what steps you can take the next 12 months to get you on track for where you financially want to be. Because everybody on here is probably in a different situation. Some of you guys have more. Hopefully, I'm gonna have to stop my share because it keeps the video maybe part for a second. And so some of you guys have different goals, different ideas, different things that you want to accomplish. See if I do that, if that helps. And what I would be asking yourselves is what is it that you can do in the next 12 months? Because right now we're at a time where there's more opportunity in the next that's going to be around in real estate in the next couple of years than we've seen in the past decade. And what are you going to do to take advantage of that? We're seeing auctions where houses are going at minimum bids. We're seeing opportunities on market. We're finding deals in places like Florida and New York where we're getting 40, 50% returns on market deals with fix and flips. We're finding so many good opportunities to really help you, that you could be doing the same things, building wealth and building capital and also the opportunities in the rental market. There's so much going on with how easy it is to now get loans for rental properties. If you get them from a tax auction, you can create a ton of instant equity, pull out some of that equity, buy more property. There's so many opportunities out there that you should be taking advantage of, and if you're not, you're really missing out to a degree in a lot of different ways. And so one thing that we are going to give an opportunity for everybody on this training today is for you to schedule an individual action plan session to really put together what are the actions you should be taking in the next 12 months to get you on track for your goals. It's not something we're going to offer on every podcast, but we are offering it on this one today, where you will actually going to give you an opportunity to go ahead and schedule a one-on-one meeting with myself, or a couple other individuals to really, a couple of other top mentors and trainers to sit down and go and really help you put together an individual plan of action. So if you're not asking yourself, you're not thinking about how can some of the information today get me on track for my financial goals? How can I build more passive income? How can I build more income in general? Then I definitely think those some of those thoughts should be on your mind as we move forward. So I'm gonna put a link in the chat. So hopefully everyone should know where the chat is at. That's that little talk button there. So pay attention to that. I see some of you guys already on here. Also shout out to us where you're from. If you can find the chat, tell us where you're from today because that, we might incorporate some of that into some of the markets that we talk about if it makes sense. So tell it, find that chat button, find the Q&A button, and also, I know, this Q&A button, utilize that. Also, you should be able to find the reaction button as well. So it looks like we have Florida, a couple of Florida so far, Texas, New Jersey, okay, Palm Beach. Okay, we got quite a few from Florida on this morning, and quite a few from Texas. So definitely looking forward to, we've got some good things there in New Jersey, Germany. So Ralph from Germany joined us. We got kind of everyone from all over here a little bit. So we're excited to have you guys on the training today. Like I said, there's a lot of things that we're going to be covering across the board. One thing that I do want to mention is obviously there's things for those of you guys that are new to us, you know, we do have, an active, you know, membership programs. We have a lot of exciting things going on. Some of you guys have been in some of our advanced programs and other things, and we even have, let's see, where else we got here going on? Oh, some more Texas. Texas. Wow, a lot of Texas and a lot of Florida, some New Jersey. Okay, California. It's a little earlier for California than it is for Florida here today. So, but join in with us, you guys. As you have questions, ask your questions in the chat. We're going to answer most of those questions live. But one thing we're going to do a little different too towards the end is we're going to do a final Q&A from everybody on this training today where you can ask questions, any and all questions that come up during the training. If any of them, we should be able to answer all your questions in the chat. Sometimes we might say, hey, we're going to cover this in this next section, but we're going to make sure to get all your questions answered. If you don't ask questions, you don't have to participate. You're kind of missing out on part of what makes this really, really good. Is we want this to be a little more podcast style where there's some more open format, open discussion as we're going through everything with you guys. Okay. So one thing I will say, like I said, is that really you guys should be thinking about how do I track for the goals that I want to have? Where do I want to go? Here are all the things that we're going to be covering, as far as, strategies, top 5 auctions with tax lien deeds, post sales, new Michigan properties. And we're gonna have, we've got a lot of great tips and trainings to share with you. I've got some really cool things I'm going to share with you at the end. Show you, I'll even show you some of our, some lenders that we like working with that you can contact, all kinds of things that you're going to be able to take advantage of. So make sure to stay on for the entire training. We got a lot of stuff to cover, and make sure to ask your questions. And for those of you guys that have more personal questions, that's a great opportunity. Make sure you book yourself a strategy session with where we can really sit down and map out excuse me, and map out our 2020 year 2026, 2027 action plan. Because we're already almost down to the last quarter of 2026. And how many, you see years go by, but we want to see growth. And it doesn't have to be that you're doing monumental growth every year to build a substantial real estate portfolio. Even if you're doing enough to where you're acquiring 2 to 3 rentals a year, over the course of 5 years, you can have, 15, $20,000 in passive income. So it's about doing things the right way, structuring things the right way to really get you to where it is that you want to go. So I'm going to put that in the chat. I'll be joining in the Q&A. I'll be joining in here and going over some great sections with you guys here in about 45 minutes. Steve and Shade are going to be coming up here right now, and they've got some great information with the upcoming pre-sale with the New York properties and also some tips. So I'm going to pass it over to them. Hey, Steve, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Shade,
Hey,
I'm doing well. So I don't know if I forgot anything. Also, one thing I will mention is there is the reaction button, and Shade especially really likes it when you guys react with hearts. So if we could do hearts today, no, just kidding. There we go. There you go, just for Shade.
thank you. Thank you, everybody.
So funny. So you guys found the reaction button. That's awesome. Definitely, just reacting to lets us know that you're getting it and you're understanding what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you guys for a little bit. And, I'll still be in the background helping out in the chat too and everything else. And you guys are in great hands. For those of you guys, if you're brand new to us, Stephen and Shade have been doing tax sales since the late 90s. And they are probably, two of the foremost experts on tax auctions and tax liens and tax deeds and redemption deeds. And our YouTube channel goes back 18 years. So you guys can definitely check all of that stuff out, check a lot of things out. We've got, membership opportunities. We've even got 3-day live trainings I'll probably mention a little bit later that we can, that you guys can potentially participate in coming up. We got quite a few going on. And with that being said, though, you guys are, let me turn it over to the gurus of tax sales, Stephen Shea.
Awesome. Awesome. We're looking forward to it here. Um, Now, Steve, are you the one sharing?
No, I think you'll be sharing here in the beginning. Or
Oh,
I can pull it up quick.
oh, actually, here, let me get it. I got it. Here we go.
I was trying to get it because we were supposed to be doing a live stream today, and I don't know if I set it up wrong or what, but it doesn't look like it's working. So maybe when Tom is doing his portion, I can figure out what's going on with the live stream. But we definitely want to talk about a lot of important things today. We're going to be going over a number of different things. We're going to be looking at first the an upcoming auction. In fact, do you want me to pull up the slide shade quick?
Oh yeah, sure. Oh, actually,
Okay.
you know what? Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, you can pull up the slides here real quick. I don't
Or if
actually have.
you've got them, if you don't have them, I can pull them up.
You know what? I don't have them at the second, but I can download them in just a second here. If you want, or yeah, go ahead and show the slides here if you want. Actually, I don't have them
Okay.
downloaded yet here. What we're going to be
Uh,
talking about, though, just so everybody kind of knows, Tom was saying he was talking about the market, and the market, we are kind of at a unique point in time right now in terms of opportunity. And it's hard to track the market, I guess, when you're in the middle of it. It's kind of hard to see the forest from the trees. But what we know is the last year was a pretty good year for buying. And this year, we seem to have less competition than we had last year. It seems like there's more opportunities than there was last year. Like things were more competitive last year than they are today. It seems like there's less money out in the market today than there was last year. And so, uh, you know, because of that, there are just a ton of opportunities that are out there. And like Tom was saying, we're seeing homes that are selling for not too much. We've seen lots of properties that sell for opening bid amounts, but we're seeing lots of homes that are selling for very good percentages, anywhere between probably 10 to 50% of value, depending on the area, and everywhere in between. But in New York lately, they have a couple of different sales that are happening, and some of their sales are excellent sales. They're bigger sales, but there are other things that are desirable about New York. New York works well here as a state. It's an enjoyable place to live. It is a tax deed state officially, and so they practice using tax deeds, except for in a couple places like in New York City. But it's pretty much just a tax deed state that uses premium bidding. One thing that's different about New York counties, though, is that because of the way state law is written, they're required to post photos of signs in front of the property here, and so we usually get current photos of properties, and a lot of times that can include interior image, which is something that we generally only see in a couple other states, like maybe Michigan. So New York's special that way in that we can get uh, current photos of properties, we can get interior photos of properties in a lot of cases here. And also, they have auctions that are held almost throughout the year. There are auctions that were happening earlier this year. There are auctions that are going to be happening towards the end of this year. And a lot of auctions happening right now in counties. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. They also have land banks, by the way. They have over-the-counter properties, but a lot of that is turned into land banks in different areas there throughout New York. So what we're going to be looking at today is Ulster County, New York. This is a county on the southern part of New York, and the list they came out with here has about 160 properties or so. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look here at a few of them here, starting with, let's
so I
see here.
think I think you're probably I'm gonna need to give you back the slides.
Oh, here. You know what? Here, I got it. Uh, there we go. All right. So, what we're going to do though is we're going to start here. So, the Ulster County list here. Let me just back up here again. Actually, here we'll go here so we can get into it from the start. I hope I didn't break it. Oh, how bizarre. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's go into page one. Okay, so this is a list here. Actually, there's 184 properties total. But what we're going to be looking at here is a couple of different lots here. We're going to start off with lot number 21. Now, there's a mix here. There's also a lot of land. There's a number of opportunities here for big chunks of land. Um, there's also a number of different lots here. What we're going to look at, though, are a couple of these different properties here, starting with properties like this. So we've got this property right here, which the opening bid amount on this property is 23,904. You know, they call this one here a Cape Cod style property here, but you can tell this one's pretty clean. You know, in fact, if we're looking at the property here, you know, it's going to be easier. Let me do this. What we're generally looking for when we see properties in tax sales like this is an opening bid amount that is going to be roughly maybe around 10% of value. You know, the concern we have is if we see opening bid amounts that are too high. You know, if we see opening bid amounts that are 20% of its value, we know that the property doesn't have as much room to bid. Now, with a property like this one, you know, we have a nice, clean, single-family home. In fact, that's actually an older photo from what the county has. The county's image here is newer, where the property's been cleaned up here a little bit, as we can see. Property's valued out at about 369,000. So the starting bid here of 25,000 is not too bad. You know, it's within reason, especially for a house that is this clean. And we have interior images from Zillow in the last time that it sold.
Yeah, it really looks pretty good. I love when we get these new photos from the county. It really helps us make a determination on what the condition is. In fact, we're going to be looking at Michigan a little bit later on today as well. And that's one thing, I mean, if you guys know, we talk about these states where we can get additional information because it helps us better prepare for the auction in determining what needs to be done. If we're looking at a property and we can see it needs a major rehab, then that's obviously going to affect our our max bid amount. We talk about going through the three stages of due diligence, and then in that third stage, that's where we determine our max bid amount, and it's really going to be based on the condition and also the value in addition to that.
Yeah, what's interesting is when we go and look at the images here on site, they're actually from June of 2026. So these are almost like new images. You know, they're only 2 months old. You know, very recent images here. This particular property here is one that's opening up for 24,000. You know, and we go look at it, and this one actually has a ton of value here in it. Valued at 435,000 on Redfin. It's around the estimate here, and it could be even higher than that. And so again, the percentages look really good in terms of where this is starting at. Ulster is also a county that has a good population. They have a lot of sales that are happening there. It's a nice place to live, and so you know it's a desirable place, and properties sell really well there. As a result of it. But normally in tax sales, it's hard to find inventory that is, you know, awesome inventory sometimes. It's not uncommon to see properties that are, you know, they're dilapidated or that need work. These properties are all very usable to the point where they're still occupied. You know, they're being lived in right now. You know, and this property's value of well over 400,000. So the opening bid amount is a small percentage of value.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Now, those ones are a couple of older homes. Like for instance, that home was built in 1950.
And
Let's
it was starting at 23,000.
that one right there was 24,197.
24,000.
Yeah. In fact, let's look here at lot 45 here, which is just after this. But you can see that you know the homes we're looking at are are occupied. They're clean homes. They're homes. They're just like homes you might see in a bank foreclosure. They're no different from that, and that's part of what is desirable and I like about these properties. Some of them, though, have higher opening bid amounts. It doesn't mean that the numbers wouldn't work, but I didn't look at those. For instance, this one has an $80,000 opening bid. It's a little bit higher opening bid, than the other properties we're looking at. But and this one at 56,000. But again, the values of these properties justify the opening bid amounts. In most cases here, but it's properties like this. Not all the bid to value ratios are the same. Some of them have higher opening, bid to value ratios than others. This property starts at 36,000, and if we're looking at it, we love homes like this. And the reason why is because they're simple. This one is newer, so it was built in 1989, which means that it's going to have a number of far less issues than a property that was built in 1789, and or 1889, and so this property is new enough. It's sitting on 1 acre, and the value of it is pretty good. In fact, I think we've got on this one right here, 345 is roughly what it estimates out at, and it's another one where we have interior images of it. Which is handy. You can see this one is actually a good rehab candidate.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, and they have high value as well. So when we're looking at properties that are valued in the two to three, $400,000 range, there's more capital built into it. So it's easier for us to be able to pay a higher percentage. On $100,000 home, it would have to be pretty good condition for us to go over, $30,000 on it. $35,000. I mean, it'd have to really be pretty clean. But when we're getting into some of these type of homes, we can go in there and we can add new carpets, add new paint, add a new kitchen, maybe improve the bathrooms or whatever else, and still have plenty of profit margin within that deal that we can make $100,000 to $200,000 off of these type of deals every single one. You do three of those deals a year, and let's say made you $100,000 a deal. That's an extra $300,000 a year in just doing a few deals.
Yeah, yeah, and it's what's interesting about this too is just how consistently the numbers are good on these properties. So the property we're looking at here, right here, this property was built in 2007, so it's even newer than the last one. It's about 1,300 square feet. It's a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. It's also a very simple design, which make it easier to fix up here if we want. We can see it's currently occupied. And if we're looking at the value of the property, we also have interior images of it. So we can see here from at least from the last time that the property was listed here, we've got some photos here of the property to give us some idea on the property itself. But the value of it at 434 is pretty good compared to the opening bid amount. I think we saw there of 35,000 roughly. So again, we're kind of looking at that 10% ratio. It just means that there's plenty of room to bid this property up and to still have profitability in it. And so this property has good potential, and it's a big enough sale that there may be good opportunities to get some of these properties, some of these homes. There are probably at least 2 or 3 dozen homes in this auction that are probably worth going after.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely say so.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any land that looks decent?
Oh, there's a lot of land. There's actually uh let's see, that's an auto body shop right here. Let me find a couple of pieces of land here real quick because there's huge pieces of land. So you've got to watch out obviously for some of the junk land they have, but not all the land is junk. That's another house there. It's about a $400,000 house. That's quite nice here. But let me find a chunk of land here. I mean, some land that's not a small lot starting at $1,300. Um, that actually looks like it's got some decent size to it. Let me look and see. That's 10 acres starting at $1,300.
Yeah, I'd be, when I first looked at it, if that was just an acre lot, I'd be a little worried because you can see a stream going through. But with 10 acres, there probably a lot of good usable land. In fact, that stream may be a benefit at that point.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Well, and there are a lot of properties like that. And sometimes with these properties, they're smaller lots like this one, like a quarter-acre lot. And sometimes, they're acreage. There's a lot of acreage that is for sale out here in these areas. Um, Yeah, and even
Well,
some of these you can see like these there are larger lots as well. This one's 2.5 acres here. Market value of 42,000.
yeah, what's kind of interesting is this particular sale, you can see they're starting at their back tax amount. And some of these, I think, are probably going to end up, at least a couple of those lots that we passed over, I would imagine will probably end up on the land bank list because there's quite a bit of owed taxes on them.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, on some of these ones here, so um, this one's starting at 10,000, this one's starting at 9,000. I could easily see these properties not getting bids, even though the value on the properties is decent and the properties are pretty usable. It's a big enough sale that you're just probably going to see, fewer, or at least lower bidding amounts here than what you might normally see. And the value on the properties, oh, there's a single family residence back there somewhere. That's why it's 456,000. You just can't
Yeah,
see
you can
the
see
house.
it was built in 1980. I'm kind of
Yeah.
surprised they didn't drive down there and down the lane and take a photo.
Yeah, I mean it can't be too long of a lane. It's only a 1 acre lot.
Oh, look at that. It's got a garage with an apartment too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, in fact, that's something else we see sometimes with the properties out of New York and out of Michigan, is we'll see properties that have sometimes they'll have multiple units there rather than, so if you were looking for rental income, these would be some ideal properties to get. For example, let me show you one here. Uh, Lot number 122. You can see some of these houses though are quite clean, very usable properties here.
Yeah, that
Uh,
112 looks good, 121 looks good,
yeah,
122 looks good.
yeah, super clean house. With all of these starting at 36,000. So this one right here, starting at 58,000, is an interesting property because this is a three-family residence, is what it's considered. Now, it was built in 1890. But if you look at it, it's had a lot of work done to it over the years here to keep it usable because it's still occupied right now. And it's about 2,700 square feet. It's a 6 bedroom, 3 bath. So if you divide that up, it's basically three 2 bedroom, 1 bath apartments, that are
Yeah,
included in this one.
yeah, probably 800, square feet, 850 square feet, something like that.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
and the value on the property. In fact, I think it did pull up a value here on this one at about 482,000. It was about the value that placing on it here. So it starts at 50,000, but again, it's valued at nearly 500,000. And this property has some income potential as well. Pretty good income potential, all things considered here with 3 units, and it's currently occupied. It's not only does it have those units filled, but people are currently in there, and so it has the ability to bring in money right now.
yeah, yeah, this really has some higher end New York properties. I mean, with New York, you can see in some areas the value of a home like that is valued at 400,000. In another area in New York, maybe that home is valued at 120,000. I mean, that's a pretty good shape, but essentially not every county is going to be the same on what the actual property value is. And so if we're looking at a house that's worth 100,000, our bidding percentage is going to be lower in that case. We're going to want to probably stick to 10, between 10, 20 cents on the dollar, where something like this, if the home is in good enough condition, well, it could make sense to pay, 30, 40 cents on the dollar for some of these type of homes because there's more profit margin in that higher price point.
Yeah, the way they have some of the land priced out as well is interesting. That's 5 acres. They're starting at about 8,900. There's a lot of land in this in this sale, including land you probably would avoid, but a lot of the land though is not bad. Some land though, I mean, that one has like a $30,000 opening bid amount. It's only an acre and a half. They value it, they say at 83,000, but it seems like a pretty high opening bid amount
Yeah, that's what I
for
was
some
saying.
land. You
It's
know,
kind of surprising some of them have some pretty high opening bids, where I'm kind of just wondering where did all of that back tax come from?
yeah,
Have they not foreclosed on these? Or, I mean, have they been, oh, look at that house. There's just a ton of nice homes in here.
yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting sale because it probably has, I mean, just dozens of usable houses. Many of them are, I mean, the majority of the houses we've looked at today have been occupied. That one's sitting on 2.5 acres here. Yeah, just a lot of really nice homes in this sale. I mean, out of the 160 properties or so, 170 or 80 properties, there's just a lot of good properties that are they're pretty much usable and that are occupied like right now. Just like that one, and properties that clearly have had work done recently on them. They're in good shape. You can tell that they're currently being lived in here. And a lot of them, you can see that they've had rehab work done, fairly recently. Look at the size of that one.
Yeah, well, that's kind of one thing that's a little bit interesting too, is we've been looking at some of these homes that are older, but you could see that that last one that we were looking at, was incredibly uh, you can see that everything had been rehabbed on it. And so in some of these areas, they can have some older homes there. But if they've been completely rehabbed, they've probably been gutted at one time. You can tell, we always say you got to look at the outside to at least give you some kind of indication of what the interior looks like. And so if we're looking at one that we can see new siding, we can see new roof, we can see new windows, all of those are going to be a good sign.
But look at some of these. Some of these. Okay, I guess this one used to be a junkyard, so they're considering improvements on it, which is how they got the bill up to 52,000. But look at this one. This one is vacant commercial property. It's 5 acres of vacant commercial land, and they have an opening bid of $500,000 on
It's only got a value of 400,000.
it. Not even that, 39,000.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that weird? I don't understand. I don't understand how you can get $500,000 in back taxes from a lot that's vacant and valued at 40,000.
No, that's it's really unusual. We haven't seen that a lot.
Yeah, more of these clean houses, like this that are again occupied homes built in 2009. Very nice properties here, uh, along with those interesting lots. Some of these lots, the amounts are what are interesting to me because they just aren't very reflective of what I would think that it would be owed. Now, this one, I guess, is commercial as well. Maybe the commercial designation is what is giving these things such crazy numbers. Because again, it's only valued at 46,000, and at least according to the county. But they have $30,000 owed on it. A lot of these are kind of
I
like
always
that.
wonder if they made a mistake on the land. Maybe not, like they put in extra digits or something because it doesn't make sense where how are you going to get $30,000 on a piece of land when you've got to go 4 or 5 years of just paying the property taxes, and usually the property taxes on land is going to be less than it is on any of these homes.
Yeah, yeah. It very weird. Very weird. What's also weird is that out of the lots, so some of these lots are junk lots. Like for instance, we know that they're junk lots because they are well, in many cases they're landlocked. You can't access them. So there's no roads here nearby. I mean, like for instance, this lot right here for 11,000. How do you get $11,000 in delinquent taxes, on this little property here that well, I guess they are saying it has some kind of improvement on it, but it doesn't have road access. And it's only 0.05, like it's a tiny little piece of land. I don't understand how you get that much in taxes owed on it.
Well, and it's a good example of what we consider junk land. As we're going through here, we see some great deals, but we also see some that are very problematic, especially when it comes to some of this land. Even though there is some good pieces in here, the opening bid amount is a little bit puzzling, than something we would normally see where, land's going to start 5 cents, 5 cents on the dollar, maybe 10 cents on the dollar if there was a lot of back taxes, but it doesn't make sense when land is starting for 50 or 60 cents on the dollar or even more than that.
That one's not bad. That one starts at 7,000. It's 12 acres, and they value it at 70,000. So at least the numbers there work a little bit better. It's valued about, it's at 10% right now of what the county estimates the value to be worth on it. And so, yeah, some of the numbers on the land do still work, and are not as weird as the others. On some of these properties, they are, it's odd. It's odd to see some of the tax bills like this one, 162,000, and it's vacant commercial land again. You know,
Look underneath the lot though. You know, oh, it says wa- was 0, now 3.8. I don't know. I have to wonder if there's something going wrong with them. And
yeah,
what'll happen is they're just not going to sell. So the county is going to have to put them on the over-the-counter list or within their land bank, and then they're probably going to have to be willing to let those taxes go because nobody's going to buy overpriced land from a tax sale.
yeah. There are plenty of lots, so they're not so bad. I mean, this one they value at 96,000 here, 7.2 acres. Looks like there's a little pond here on it. That one's at about 11,000 starting. There is a lot of interesting land in this sale. In fact, there's probably more interesting land, or as much interesting land as there are homes, that are in the sale. That's another interesting one, 4.6 acres, valued at 70,000.
Well, you can see that that one was adjacent to the other one,
Yeah,
so adjacent
yeah,
to lot 189. So whenever we see that, that's always something that gets us interested. We always love to be able, if we can, pick up two lots right next to each other, whether that be within just a city lot or larger pieces of land, because suddenly we can, combine those two properties and probably increase our chances of being able to sell them together to one buyer.
yeah, yeah. A lot of these lots are connected, which is quite interesting. And so yeah, there are probably at least a couple of dozen homes on here that are still occupied, and then there's dozens of pieces of land here that would be worth pursuing, that are pretty good pieces of property, in this sale. And what's also interesting is that this is not the only sale like this happening in the area there in New York. There's other sales that are happening in some of the surrounding counties that have almost as many properties available for sale. So it is a really good time period to be looking at some of these properties and pursuing some of these sales, just because they've got hundreds and hundreds of properties that they're auctioning off, and the sales are big enough that there's property to spread around a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's all the properties here we had to cover here for at least this particular sale, but we do have some other sales here and other things we're going to be covering here just coming up. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, in fact, and so I think what we're going to do, we're going to have Tom take over here for a second. I'll
No,
download the
no, we're gonna go through the training tip of the week first.
Oh, that's right. Well, I'll tell you what here. I'm going to turn it over to you because I don't have the thing downloaded yet.
Okay.
So if you want, go ahead and you can steal the share here.
Okay. All right, do you see my
Oh,
screen okay?
yeah.
Okay. There we go.
Oh,
So,
by the way, Scotty, in terms of New York and redemption periods, it's a tax deed state, so we don't have to wait after the sale uh, to sell a property. At least we don't have a redemption period like that. They might have some kind of redemption period with I don't know, maybe with their foreclosures, but at least I know with their tax deeds, that you can turn around and sell their deeds. You don't have to
yeah,
wait for 3 or 4 years to do that.
yeah, there's no redemption period except for their tax liens probably I'm sure have a redemption period, but their tax deeds, you're going to receive a deed from the county and essentially at that point you can go ahead and sell it. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about tax lien risk. We're going to go over a little bit what are tax liens, how do they work, and then really go over what you need to watch for when investing in tax lien certificates. There's quite a few good auctions coming up. In fact, one thing I was looking at earlier is Mississippi has moved all of their auctions to online auctions. And so in some of those states that used to just be on-site auctions, this gives us an opportunity to bid at these auctions, and a lot of them have very low competition. And so I would rather earn a higher interest rate in another state, as long as everything else within that state works, than in a more competitive area.
Yeah, well, and it's because the competition isn't level everywhere. There's some places that have or draw more investors because of where they're located at or how easy they are to get to. But there's a lot of different reasons to buy tax liens, and tax liens are a very attractive investment in so many different ways. But it's because of the security of the investment, though, and the ability to make a higher rate of return. It's the combination of the two. Normally, you don't get those two things together. Normally, the higher the security of the investment, the lower the rate of return. But with tax sales and with tax liens specifically, we have a pretty good rate of return here for an investment that is basically completely secured because it's secured by the real estate. That's the big thing with tax liens. When a tax lien is issued against a property, it uses the entire property as collateral for the debt that's owed. And so that can be very valuable property. And what it means is they're very secure investments here. And essentially, the investment itself, the tax lien, is it's enforced by state law. As an investor, though, one of the reasons why you want to buy tax liens is because they're so simple. There's a lower amount of due diligence that we need to do on tax liens because we're never actually buying the property. We're just buying a lien, against the property. But for the most part, though, it's because of their simplicity. Because if I buy a tax lien, I'm probably not going to have to do anything on it except for sit back and wait for it to redeem so that I can get paid, my high rate of return. That's part of what attracted people to liens is just the fact that most of the time you don't need to do anything.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're enforced by state laws. They're easy to do. We don't need to do the same type of due diligence as we would with a tax deed investment. So when we're talking about tax liens, there's a couple of things to remember. Usually it's going to be the tax collector or the treasurer that's going to be conducting the auction. So when we're going to a tax lien sale, it's usually going to be the tax collector that holds it. Also, tax liens are sold on a 1 year basis, and many times they're going to be sold the same time each year. That's the reason we see Mississippi all happening within the 31st day of August, is because they're all conducting their auctions on the same day, or in Florida the same month, Arizona the same month. And so you get to be a yearly sale that's going to happen where they're going to be offering those tax liens. Now, they can be sold on site, they can be sold online. But as we mentioned, a lot of these counties are moving to online auctions, making it easier for us to be able to invest in these states that traditionally did not have online auctions.
Yeah, in fact, we've seen incredible expansion in our ability to access different tax sales, different auctions here across the country. Um, it's the simplicity of tax liens though that it draws people in, and it's the high rate of return that you can earn on the tax liens without having much risk up. So three things happen on the day of the tax sale when you go to an auction here. Number one is the lien is issued against the property. The lien begins accruing interest on the day of the auction here, whether the property sells or not, and the redemption period begins as well. So both of those things start off on the day that the lien is created. And even if the property didn't sell at auction, that redemption period is still ticking away, and the interest is still accruing. Because no matter what, when they go to pay it off, if they're late on their taxes, they're going to have to pay penalties or fees, in addition to that. And that's really what that penalty is, or what the interest accruing is, basically just late fees.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Also one thing that's going to happen is the redemption period is going to expire. So like Shade said, it's going to start earning interest. Excuse me, the redemption period is going to start, and the tax lien is essentially going to be issued on the property. Now, after purchasing the property, there's really only two things that can happen. I guess there is a few outliners, but 99% of the time, either the investor is going to pay off the county and the lien is going to be removed, or they're not going to pay. And essentially, that's where the property will either go through a foreclosure process through the county, as an example in Florida, where the lien holder can fill out a deed application and then it's sold at a tax deed auction. Or, like happens in most states, that lien holder can go ahead and foreclose on the property and become the new property's owner.
Yeah, which essentially here, most of the time, you end up getting checks in the mail or you getting paid on it because property is redeemed. So when a delinquent property owner pays off the money they need to pay for delinquent taxes, the county can redeem the lien. Basically, they can pay off the taxes that were owed and they can send a check to the investor for their initial investment plus the interest rate that they earned up to that point. So this is just an old image here of a tax lien check that came in for Steve from years ago.
Yeah, in fact, we're going to be talking about bankruptcy here in a minute. So I want you to kind of remember this particular check because this has to do with bankruptcy. And this looks like this was issued to me back in 2009. And I think this was for a tax lien back in 2006, if I remember right.
Yeah,
Could have been 2007.
yeah, that sounds about right. And yeah, and this is basically the worst case scenario there in what can happen uh, with it. Now, these are kind of interesting properties here in Colorado because Colorado just went through some changes in their law as a result of deals like this. So these Colorado's a tax lien state, all right, meaning that they have tax liens that have a redemption period attached to them. If that redemption period expires, in a tax lien state like this, all the lien holder has to do is they can apply for foreclosure, so they can start foreclosing on the property here. And if somebody doesn't come and pay it off, they could actually foreclose on the property for nothing more than just the taxes owed on it. And in some cases, that's exactly what happened. There were some people that got very lucky here. Like in both cases here, delinquent tax total on the property on the bottom, 29,000. The property's valued over 600,000. On the top here, we've got a property that's valued at 290,000 here, that starts at 10,000. The problem that these kinds of sales or that this creates is that the lien holder is able to get the properties for just the bare minimum of the taxes owed for the years they have here. So maybe 3 or 4 years worth of delinquent taxes, and the property could be acquired. But it doesn't leave any money left over for the property owner if they have equity in their property. It doesn't really leave any way for them to have money left over after the sale. And that's actually something they started to get in trouble for. It's one of the reasons why Colorado changed. They've set it up now so that rather than lien holders being able to automatically foreclose on properties, now lien holders have to fill out a tax deed application, just like Florida, and it puts these properties into an auction where they'll sell to the highest bidder, and then those funds are used to pay off the lien holders. And so now what that does too is it basically means that there will always be some money left over there for the property owner after the sale like that were to occur. So if the taxes owed on the property here are only 50,000, but the property sells for 150,000, that extra $100,000 would go to the property owner at the time of foreclosure. And that's basically what they had to put in place, was a system that allowed them to sell the properties rather than just having lien holders foreclose on them for nothing more than the cost.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and we've seen a lot of things change in regards to that. So let's go ahead and let's talk about really four major involved with purchasing tax lien certificates. We're going to go through each one of these, and I told you to go ahead and remember bankruptcy. And part of that is because, bankruptcy does not happen very often. In fact, we get, people asking us all the time about bankruptcy and they're worried about bankruptcy. But it's really not something that comes up very much. I mean, really, what's going to happen with a bankruptcy is most of the time the county is going to go ahead and pull that property before they actually it goes to auction. So people have asked, well, can I go ahead and research for bankruptcy beforehand? Not really, because if when a bankruptcy happens, it's going to be after the tax sale. Because if there's a bankruptcy before, the county's not going to go ahead and include it in the sale. Also, one thing to remember is that 99%, we put 99% of tax liens with a bankruptcy, you're still going to make back your money. And the reason we put 99% is we haven't heard of a case where somebody did not get back their money. Now, there could be one out there, but it's incredibly rare. We've never heard of it. And it's really pretty rare for you to actually have the tax lien go into the bankruptcy court and have to be paid payment. So that check that I told you to look at, that was a check, a partial payment for one of the tax liens that ended up having a bankruptcy. Because most of the time there is a bankruptcy on a property, what's going to happen is you're never going to know about it. You're not going to know there was ever a bankruptcy. You're just going to receive your check in the mail because within that bankruptcy, the property taxes have to get paid first. And so the only way that that happens is if there's no equity, there's no money, and then they have to put you on some type of payment program where in that case, I think it was a $1,600 lien or something like that on a single family home. I got a series of checks, sometimes a couple times a month, sometimes once a month, over a period of about 6 months or so, that went ahead and paid off all of my money that I had invested into that tax lien certificate.
Yeah, I mean, really, you only have to worry about bankruptcies really with tax liens. I mean, and even then, it's very rare with tax liens. With tax deeds, we don't have to worry about it because those properties would get pulled before any kind of an auction were to take place. And once they're sold through the county in the auction, they're no longer attached to anything like that. But yeah, so we only have to worry about it with tax liens. It's not very common, and it's not even really worth trying to look out for because you're ultimately not going to lose your money. A bigger risk, really, than bankruptcy is going to be roll up. Roll up is going to be applicable here anytime there is you've got a redemption period on the property that's multiple years long. What the roll up is how many years worth of taxes are owed on this property. Because if you're going to be able to foreclose on it, the only way the county is going to allow you to do that is if you've brought the taxes current, and that means paying off all those other old tax liens. So that's what tax lien roll up ultimately is. In order to foreclose on tax liens, the taxes have to be current, and that means you're going to have to pay off any other liens that exist outside of your lien. So it's a bigger deal in some places than it is in other places. Like, for instance, in Florida, we have to watch out for roll up because you can have up to 7 years worth of taxes owed on a property. And so if you have 7 years worth of taxes, that can add up and turn into a pretty big tax bill. But we don't have to worry about it everywhere. Like, for instance, in a tax lien state like South Carolina, they have a 1 year redemption period on their liens, and so they don't really allow enough time for there to be really a major roll up problem. So we don't have to worry about roll up so much in South Carolina as we do in other lien states like Florida.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. In fact, kind of speaking of Florida, here's kind of an example of a tax lien that we've seen many people make a mistake on when investing into Florida liens. So let's say that you were to find a tax lien certificate on a $10,000 building lot, and it's a $200 or $300, $500, let's say, a tax lien certificate. Hey, this looks like a good investment. I'll go ahead and buy this couple $100 tax lien certificate. Seems like the property has value, but you haven't gone through, or they haven't gone through and researched the other additional tax liens that are available or issued against the property. So, if I'm buying a let's say a $300 tax lien on a $10,000 lot, well, hey, my money seems protected. This is only 3% of the property's value. This is going to be a good investment. But as we start looking more into the property, there's several different years. So in this case, let's say that there's a tax lien that's a $900 tax lien, an $1,100 tax lien, a $1,300 tax lien. Well, we combine all of those tax liens together, that's going to be $9,300. And so what's happened is over the last 7 years, because we're going to need to check the life of the lien within that state. So in Florida, they allow 7 years worth of tax liens to remain on the property. In Arizona, they require 10 years. In a state like Maryland, they'll go ahead and you need to foreclose within a year and a half. So in some states, they're not going to have a huge amount of roll up, but
Yeah,
in some states, it can be pretty risky.
Texas never forgets.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and there's some states that don't, and so, in this case, we could get ourselves into harm by thinking, "Oh, this looks like a good tax lien," but we haven't looked in to additional other liens. I mean, the longer the redemption period is as well, the more liens that could be issued against it. So, like in Wyoming, for example, they can go for 4 years. Well, we know there can be at least 4 years worth of back taxes in that case, and the life of lien may even go longer than that. Maybe they allow it to, 8 tax liens before those tax liens fall off.
Yeah, yeah, and those are all good points. Whenever we're dealing with with tax liens, states are buying tax liens. We just want to know how, basically, if there's other outstanding money that's owed. As long as we know that answer, we'll be safe and we'll always be okay. As long as we just have some kind of a grasp of what exactly is owed. Now, I would say that one of the bigger risks for tax sale investors um, is going to be useless land. Useless land is actually a pretty big risk, and it's because, as you can see, even when we're going through the list there in New York, you can tell that some of the properties are good usable properties, but some of the properties are just leftovers. Some of the properties are junk. I mean, and it happens every time you develop an area, you're going to have certain pieces that are not usable pieces of property that that are still going to end up getting taxed. That's the main difference, is because the county's still taxing them. The county doesn't care whether the property has real value and can be sold or whether it's a leftover piece. It's still going to have an assessed value and it's still going to get taxed. And because of that, it's still going to end up cycling through the tax sale. In fact, a lot of these properties probably cycle through the tax sale over and over and over again, because somebody picks them up and realizes that they are useless and eventually decides to stop paying property taxes on it, because why pay for a property if you can't do anything with it? So when we're talking about useless land, the most common types of land we run into that are useless are landlocked properties or side lots, like properties that are adjacent. Maybe it's part of the person's yard, something like a side lot like that doesn't really have any use to us because it's only valuable to the person that lives there and that has the ability to use it if you can't put another house on it. And that's the story with a lot of land. Irregular shaped lots, swamp or wetlands, that's definitely something we run into in some cases. Thin plots of land or strips of land. We see that all the time. You'll see properties that are roads, or maybe they're only 5 feet wide and 100 feet long. We find that as well. Most of the time, you can determine a property's use by its value. Its value is usually reflective of its use. If it has use, the value tends to also be there and apply as well. But ultimately, though, it applies to any property that you can't build on. So if we're talking about residential property, then it would apply to any lot that you couldn't build a house on, or if it's commercial, or any type of property. If you can't build on it, essentially, we would consider it to be an unusable or useless property.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and we always talk about property needing to have both use and value. So if you don't want to own the property, then hey, maybe somebody will pay you off. You could buy that tax lien and maybe they'll pay you off, but what if they don't? And if it's a junk property, those are the type of properties that are most likely to go to the tax sale because they are junk properties. And so it's just not worth it. People will go, I remember a few years ago, people would go on and they'd try to say, oh, look how easy it is. And they'd go buy some just trash lien, some $50 lien on in Florida to try to prove how easy it is. Well, that was a trash lien. They were showing people essentially, them buying a trash lien, and so we need to make sure that they're going to be good investments. The last thing is condemned property. Condemned homes. Now, when it comes to homes, we're going to look at the condition. We're never going to go out and do an on-site condition for a tax lien because chances are you're never going to own the home. But we are going to do our online evaluation like we do in stage one due diligence. Really, stage one due diligence will protect you for most tax liens that you purchase. If we're going through and we're looking at the online information, we're looking at the market values, we're getting a good idea that everything seems to be in place, well, then that's a tax lien that we're going to buy. But if we do see major damage, if we see windows broken out, if it looks like it's been abandoned and overgrown, then we're probably going to avoid those tax liens because, again, we don't want to own those properties.
Yeah, any property that is in whose condition is too rough, or if at least if it looks like it's going to need too much work, especially value limited properties. The more valuable the property is, the less this is a major problem for us. But if a property's value is limited, then we have to be very careful with the condition of the property and what we get into. In other words, some of your cheapest properties, that will come up. Uh, are your riskiest properties, because they have a limited amount of value and they need a ton of work. If you have a property that's only worth 60 or $70,000, then there's not a whole lot of work you can put into that before you're going to lose money. And it wouldn't take much more than something like a roof or something to cover that cost and more. And so we're always very careful with properties that have whose condition is very rough. I mean, if it looks like it's condemned, then we probably are going to avoid it. If the condition looks like the whole house needs to be redone, we usually avoid it unless there's something compelling or some compelling reason not to.
Yeah. Now, can you see my screen, Shade?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing, we've got a few minutes before Tom jumps on here. And I just thought I'd show, we can see all of these Mississippi sales that are coming up on 8/31. So the 31st day of this month. But there was kind of interesting sale here, and we'll see these sometime. We can see this Clay County, Missouri tax lien sale. And it's going to go ahead and the date is the 24th of this month. So it's, about a week or two away. But it's always interesting to see these other counties or other states that are starting to move over to online auctions. Missouri is a tax lien state. They actually have some tax deed properties as well in like Kansas City and St. Louis. There's a number of different land banks. In fact, in last week's podcast, we actually looked at a land bank in Missouri that had property starting at 10 cents on the dollar. But whenever we see these counties start to move over to online auctions, to us, that's going to be kind of a good sign.
Yeah, very interesting. So this is Clay County, Missouri.
Yeah, Clay County, Missouri. Now let's look at this first one right here and let's see what type of property it is.
Oh, it looks like it's maybe a landlocked one.
Yeah, very well could be. So, this may be a good example of what we would classify as a junk lien. We could look a little more into it, see how much the value is. But, I also kind of wonder, does that happen to be some type of creek or drainage or something? We're not quite sure, but definitely could be one that we might avoid just based on what it is.
Yeah, and the face amount of 435 is not too high. You can have land that doesn't necessarily have a lot of value that could have a lien amount of about that. Now, for a lien amount here of $3,300, that's enough that the property has to have some kind of value there to it in order to justify that. And as we can see, there's improvements to it. It looks like it may be a home, something like that. We've got a physical address on it. There you go, in Fairfield.
I don't think that's it. Oh, this is Birmingham. It's kind of
I didn't
weird.
even I didn't even know there was a Birmingham,
Well,
Missouri.
maybe it's not. I don't know where I got that. Oh, I just see. Oh, I say Birmingham Fire Station. So there's.
Oh, it's a little town. I mean, it kind of looks similar. Oh, except we don't see that big thing on the right.
My example's not turning out too well.
Just try another one here. if this one's being hard to find.
Yeah.
Yeah, although for most of these that are improved, they're usually fairly easy to see. This one you can see is a nice single family house. It's on King Avenue here.
Oh, they got a property image.
Oh
Oh, look
yeah.
at that.
Oh yeah, they've got a sign up in front there too.
I didn't know that they had to put signs on them for.
I wonder if there's an image for every one of those properties.
We'll take a
Probably.
look.
Oh, it's in Excelsior Springs. I've been to Excelsior Springs. Yeah, that looks like a pretty good property here, especially considering that its base amount is under 5,000. Yeah,
Yeah.
valued at 216, so the value is certainly there.
But let's see if they do have them. Oh, I clicked on the same one. Oh, they have a PDF too. It just looks like it's maybe the tax information.
Yeah, maybe it's the notice they send out.
But what it is nice is we can see the roll up right there.
Yeah.
So we know what the total roll up is. In fact, those 2 years are what are combining for it.
Yeah, and we do have, yeah, we've got a property image and a sign up from each one of them. So that's pretty handy for us. Um,
One thing that's kind of interesting is it looks like there's some type of sign here on the door. Now that may be, you know, that may be a sign about, I guess that may, because it might say no trespassing. I thought that might be a condemned sign, but it could be a no trespassing sign. But, that's something we would look for. Now, this home looks like it needs some work, but based on the value, would look a little more into the condition to make a decision on it. But if it has enough value, even though it's still kind of rough, we may still go ahead and purchase the tax lien on it based on what the lien amount is versus the actual value.
yeah, I mean, oh, that one's a big piece of, that's a big
Oh, so
property, like a school or something,
track?
huh?
Yeah,
An old track, maybe. This is also in Excelsior Springs. Oh, this is probably an old school. Yeah, go down to that street side image.
that's an old street side image.
Yeah, it is from 2008. Very old. But that's
There's
a big
newer.
building, though.
Yeah, that's a massive building. Well, and a massive piece of land as well. I mean, you look how big that building is, and then you've also got all of that now.
Uh, Oh, yeah, we
Whenever,
can see it's the 2 years there they're combining on that.
yeah, you got a $6,000. I mean, that has some value to it, but it also that's a big project.
All of these lanes would have a tremendous amount of security here in them and very safe investments.
It's a duplex.
Yeah, that's not bad.
At least, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a duplex. I find this really interesting. I didn't know, and I guess we could have looked back through the state guides, and they would probably tell us that they had to do notification. But I didn't realize for a tax lien that they actually have to go through there and notify and put a sign in each one of the yard.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. I don't know that we've at least I don't remember seeing that in Missouri either.
Yeah, so I think Tom should be coming back pretty soon, and he'll go ahead and go over some important real estate information, talk about some cool things. So maybe we'll look at one more property while he jumps on.
Oh, it looks like he's jumping on right now.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, if you guys want to look at one more, you still can, but I'm here whenever.
Let's see which one's the biggest.
17,000. Look at that one.
There's one for 74,000.
Oh, it's commercial. Yeah, that's like multi-million dollar property.
Yeah, that is a big property.
Yeah, so $70,000 lien, and you see that property's probably valued at a couple $1 million.
Oh, that's in Kansas City.
It's like a whole
Yeah,
office building.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's got a good sized parking lot. What does it say up there? JM Ross, maybe?
yeah. It looks like
Yeah, it's in like a whole, looks like there's other retail around it too.
Yeah, suites available. So, I mean, there's tax liens on all kinds of properties. You could, I mean, if you just want to invest into one tax lien, that would be something like that. There's another one for 39,000.
yeah, lots of commercial opportunities there with some of these bigger tax liens.
Yeah, dispensary.
We see dispensaries get all the time, huh?
Oh, see,
I think in a
definitely.
lot of states they overdid them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like everyone thought they were going to do one, so they got overdone.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'm not sure how
So,
I give you back. I'm still kind of new
Oh,
to
I
Zoom.
think I think Tom can actually click on the share button, can kind of take it over.
yeah.
Perfect.
Sometimes it messes it up. All you have to do is push stop share, Steve. There's like a red stop share button on the main display.
Oh, that right?
Yep, you're good. So the things I'm going to be getting into next is with you guys. Oh, man, there's a lot that I could cover with you, and I always feel like part of the reason why we do 3-day live trainings is because we have so much that we want to cover across the board, and it's hard to sometimes fit it into 3 hours. But I've got some of the exit strategies I'm going to talk about with you guys. That's why we also are allowing you guys to have a one-on-one type scenario with us as well. But we do have 3-day live trainings coming up in multiple locations. So if you guys can see that on here. And at our 3-day live trainings, that's one of those things. If you're interested, you can just click on the link or talk to the office, and they can get you scheduled for it. But we've spent 3 full days going through not only how to acquire tax deed properties and liens and everything else, but also what your exit strategies should be. Everything from wholesaling to fix and flips to rentals to commercial, and really spend some time getting in depth. So if those of you guys are new to us, you're able to attend that. If you're interested, I can provide a link in the chat. Currently the price is changing at the end of the month, but currently with discounts and everything, you're able to attend for about $299. So essentially $300 for 3 days, and that we've got ones coming up in LA, Tampa, Houston, DC, kind of all over the place. So as you guys, for anybody that hasn't been to one, I definitely encourage you to get to one. Those 3 full days, and if you're not able to do that, like I said, there's dates and times in various areas of the country. Unfortunately, we can't get to everywhere. We just don't do enough of them. We can't get to every single city in the country, but we do have that option. So if it's something you're interested, find the chat. We can send you a link, and you can even attend a training more on some of that and some of what we talk about there. Now, what I want to get into with you guys first and foremost, let's see here. There is I want to take some time and really go through. I'm going to spend a little bit of time and go through some of our current, some of the current, what you should be thinking about from a rental scenario. And then I'm also going to take a little bit of time and show you some fix and flips. So I'm actually going to even show you some of the deals before either now or maybe if I run out of time, I'll do it at the end. But show you some of the deals that you can take advantage of as with with the current marketplace. I mean, some of these deals are serious opportunities. And so, and the amount of financing and opportunities that are available today, there's more private funding available than has ever existed in the real estate game. There's hard money and private lenders that will give you, loans very easily on fix and flips, but also on rental properties up to 30-year fixed mortgages and at about 6%. So there's a lot of things that you can do across the board. One of the biggest things that I look at as we're moving through this is what's going to allow you to really get on track for what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm gonna talk mostly just about, I'm gonna pull the slides up here for you. And the difference between residential cash flow and tax deed cash flow properties. So here's the share here. And as we're doing that, you guys feel free to bring up questions. Like I said, there's a lot of things I'm going to be getting, during just this discussion. Okay, you should be able to see that. So when it comes to residential cash flow versus tax deed cash flow, we kind of have a rule with cash flow properties regardless that we want to make at least 1% net per month or 12% a year. So that means if you have 100,000 invested, then obviously you want to net $1,000 a month on that rental property. Now, there's some markets in the country, like those of you guys joining us from California, that's not going to really happen. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to get those numbers very easily, even the 1% rule. But there's so many areas of the country where it's easy to pick up tax deeds at a great price, put some money into them. We're seeing it where we're getting much better than the 1% rule. We're making 30, 40, 50% a year in cash flow on our properties. And if you think about a return on your money, I don't know a lot of places you're going to get a better return on your money than 30, 40, 50% a year. And you're also getting over time appreciation. So the tax deed rentals, some of the properties we've bought in the last year, we've gotten a bunch of them minimum bid. In certain states like Arkansas, I spent anywhere from about $1,718 for the cheapest house we bought, up to about $22,000. And those homes are worth anywhere from about $120,000 to $350,000. And so when we're talking about buying, properties at the right price, that makes a big difference because then you're going to get much better than 1% rule. So if you're buying a house at 5 to 30, 40 grand, we're putting a little bit into rehab on it. Obviously, you're going to be renovating differently for rentals versus fix and flips. And, we're just trying to get rent ready. We're not trying to say do full rehab. And in areas like that, you're probably going to get rent somewhere between about $850 up to about $1,900 a month. So when it comes down to it, you're able to take things much farther And so if you have, let's say, 70 grand in your retirement account, your solo 401k or self-directed IRA. And by the way, for those that don't have your retirement accounts directed for real estate, that's something we can help you with too. You can actually use your retirement accounts to buy real estate property. You can use your retirement accounts to bid to buy properties from the auctions. You just have to get it structured correctly. You have to get it set up in the right type of self-directed IRA 401k, and you're able to do that. And because I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan. I'd rather put my money into property than into stocks or bonds or whatever else. But in that case, you'd be able to buy two properties, let's say 25K, put 10 grand into them, they're cash flowing, you on the low end, 850 a month. Well, in that way, you'd be making about 29% cash on cash return on your money. And netting or getting a cap rate of low about 22%. Plus, you have a ton of instant equity as you jump into that. And that's one of the big tickers. Um, is you're going to have a bunch of instant equity across the board, you know. And so when we look at all this stuff, those are things that we're going to be taking into consideration, across the board is what that instant equity can make a big difference for how you grow this portfolio. So here's an example. Let's say you bought it for 20,000, you put 15 into it for 35 grand, it's getting $1,000 a month in rent. That means it's grossing about 12,000 a year, netting after taxes, insurance, and maintenance about 27.1% a year. So that means every 4 years the property pays for itself. 100% return on your investment every 4 years. Plus, you're going to gain some equity, but you also have instant equity. So in this case, you'd actually have, oh, that number's wrong in there. That's funny. I didn't just notice that. But you'd actually have, if you're into it for 35, it's worth 110, you have about what, $65,000 in equity, 75,000 in equity in that property. And you'd be able to take that and do a lot with it. And so when I look at tax deed rentals, one of the scenarios that we really pay attention to, and let me show you a different slide, is what we can do with that property, after the fact. So if I come here, is you can use that to substantially grow a portfolio. Now, there are a bunch of things that you're gonna have to do, obviously, to make this thing happen, but you don't necessarily have to keep using your own cash because, and let me just show you. So what it would look like is a little bit like this. So in that case, when, instead of buying one property, let's say you're buying properties at a tax deed auction, now they're getting rents per month. Well, after we have lenders, which we're happy to share with you guys, we don't get anything from them. We just have a bunch of lenders that we know are good lenders that will give you 30-year fixed mortgages on those rentals at about 6% interest rate, and they'll give you up to 70, 80% of the equity. So in that scenario I was just showing you where you have 75,000 equity and you're into for 35, it's worth 110. I might be able to pull out an $80,000 loan, maybe the $90,000 loan against that property. And now I can take that 90,000 and go buy more. And as you start going through cycles on that, pretty soon you have 6 houses, then 9, and 12, and 15, and 18. And you can actually use the equity from your other properties to buy additional properties. Now, typically we like to keep that fairly conservative. So I don't want to have, and I'll try and break down an example with you guys on this stuff. But when we're talking about exit strategies, and then I'm going to talk about some fix and flip stuff with you, turning it into good rental properties across the board can make a big difference, on where your portfolio is going, how you're building it. So I'm gonna try over here. Is this other screen I have? It's a little bit easier to do whiteboarding on. But let me see if I can show you guys this. So move this over just a bit. So as we're looking at it, you know, across the board is if I'm looking at a property, and let's just say that you go get one property at a tax deed auction, a little house like this, and you pick it up for 25K, and then you put 10,000 into it to renovation. So now you're into it for 35,000. Let's say it's worth 120,000. Okay, and I'll show you some real examples of this. I mean, across the board. I mean, there's some properties you need less. There's one house we picked up for about 20 grand. We're only putting about 5 grand into it. It's rent. It was almost pretty much rent ready to go. And so in that case, it's we're in for about 25K and the rents in that area about 1,100 bucks a month. So let's just say in this case, the rents here are $1,200 a month. Well, right there, you put your own 35,000 into this deal, correct? However, that doesn't mean that's where it has to, that's where you stop. Because I have private lenders, like Castle, Kiavi, Center Street, a whole bunch of others, private hard money lenders, where you can get 30-year fixed mortgages. They're called DSCR loans, okay, at 6% interest, sometimes up to 7% interest. And you can get anywhere between 70 and 80% of the market value. So now it's worth 120,000. Maybe if you were doing a fix and flip, you would have put 25 into it and be worth 150. So maybe it'd be worth a little more if you do more renovation. But in this case, it's not worth it because we're trying to maximize rents. And so now you go, okay, I've got this, and now I can go and potentially get a mortgage on the property. And and now I go and pull out, let's say 80,000. Okay. Well, instead of getting the 1,200 bucks a month, now I might be down to 600. Is that still good? Yeah. So I'm still cash flowing $600 a month. That means as long as it's rented out 6 months out of the year, it's covering the full year mortgage payments. If I'm pulling cash out of a rental, the thing I want to be concerned about is I never want to have to make that mortgage payment. Who's going to make those mortgage payments every single time, you guys? The tenants, right? And so that's why I want making those payments. And so that's a very conservative amount to where you're not over leveraging or anything else where it's very easy to get a return. Now you've got still $600 left there, but now you've got the ability to go get a couple more. Whoops, switch from highlighter back to pen.
Hey,
Here,
Tom,
yeah,
could you try doing me a favor? Can you go to the more button real quick and see if there's a option that says live stream, and then
more button.
yeah, the more button, and then live on custom live stream service.
Mine doesn't say it on mine.
Okay, all right.
Actually, there is a live stream.
If there's
What do you want to
a live
live
on
stream custom service?
yeah, because that yeah, I tried to set it all up so we could try live streaming on the YouTube channels and stuff, but I think I had to click on that button.
Do you want live on YouTube?
Live on custom live stream service. Is there something that says that?
Yep. Yes. Tell me if that does anything
Yeah,
different.
yeah, it looks like it's being live streamed. So, sorry everyone that's just coming in now. We just figured out the live stream. This is our first time, but I think that we're ready to go. So I'll let you go get back to what you're doing. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go through. Let me get back to what I was talking about now. So in this case, in what we're looking at here is now I can go and get two properties, right? And maybe I'm into each of those. Even if I said I was into each of these for 40, maybe I bought them for 15, 20, and I'm putting that much into them. And so maybe I bought for 15 and I'm putting 20 into this one. Bought this one for 20 and put 20 into it, whatever that might be, right? Those numbers. Now I got two rental properties. And if they're each worth about 120, I'm just going to stick with that number. On average, I'm getting an average of $1,200 a month. I realize some I might be getting 900, some I might be getting 1,600, 1,700, but we'll just say an average of 1,200 bucks a month. Well, now I've got two rentals that I used the equity from the property and I got my original money back plus the equity from the property. And now I can go get at least two more, and if maybe I'll even potentially, if I got good enough deals, I could get three more. Let's just say in this case, you got two more. Well, now, once I've got 3 months of rent rolls, what can I do it again? I can rinse and repeat the same process again, pull out 80,000 here, 80,000 here, and now I've got 160K. And instead of course, instead of 1,200 bucks a month on each of these, right? Instead of 1,200, I'm getting 600 a month times two now. So I'm getting $1,200 a month here. Plus, I'm getting $600 a month on the original. So I'm still cash flowing $1,800 a month. And now I have $160,000 cash. So what do you think if I'm trying to build a portfolio? What do you think I'm going to do again? I can rinse and repeat that same process and do the same thing again. And then this time, maybe we actually get four, potentially even, so we got five properties here. And do you guys see, hopefully you can see, like, this is a strategy where the only capital you had to put in was the original 35,000. And even if you didn't have all of that, you could actually have just, as long as you had the money to buy the property at the auction, you could potentially get a loan for the rest on the construction loan if you wanted. But now, as we start rinsing and repeating again, it's the same exact scenario. It's just times five, right? So you know, when I look at once I do the same thing, now I'm getting, oh, there it goes. Now I'm getting 80, 80, 80, 80, and $80,000 here. Let's say they're each worth 120 on average. I'm getting $1,200 a month. Okay, 120, 120. And then you're getting $1,200 a month in rent. Well, of course, that's going to get cut in half. It's a 600 with new loan. Now you have a 600 mortgage payment. But now instead of 600 times one, two, you're getting 600 times five in this case. So you're essentially getting still 3,000 a month from these properties here in cash flow. But now you've got 80 times five, right? So essentially now you've got 400,000 to go into the next group with. So it doesn't take too many of these cycles, you guys, and you could be substantially, significantly changing a lot of things. Because now, if I do one more cycle, right? Oops, it's going to highlighter. Now I'm going to get 10 properties, 10 more properties, rather draw all these, you know. And at this point, if I'm getting $1,200 a month in cash flow times 10, I'm getting 12K a month in cash flow here. Even if you stop there, right? If you stop there, essentially, oh my gosh, what is going on here? If you stopped here, you would still have one, two, three, eight. You'd have a total of 18 properties, and you would have 10 that are free and clear, have no mortgages on them, that are paid for, that you're getting $12,000 a month in cash flow. And you have 8 other properties that are leveraged, but you're still getting what, $4,800 a month. So you're making about 18,000 a month in rental property if you stopped right there. If this was your new line, you said, okay, we're done. 18 grand a month is enough for me. I'm done. And the other 8 properties are going to pay themselves off over time through making those mortgage payments. Now, if you decide to go one more time, right, you would end up with, instead of 12,000 a month, instead of 12,000 a month, you would end up with about 6,000 a month. So you'd still be over $10,000 a month cash flow, but you would essentially, if you pulled out money one more time, you'd pull out about $800,000 in cash. And the best part, you guys, is if I pull out that $800,000 in cash, that is a non-taxable event because it's not profits, it's a loan. And you don't get taxed on borrowed money. And so even though somebody else is making those loan payments for me, my tenants, I'm not getting taxed. So that $800,000 cash, I could technically do whatever I want with it. But you know what? Now if I went and bought a whole bunch more rentals, I might buy me 20 more rental properties. And now I have 20 properties that are free and clear at 20,000 a month, plus the other, what, 10,000, almost 11,000 a month that I'm currently making. Or that could be a great down payment on a multifamily, or apartment building. And so there's so many things that you can do with that make a big difference across the board. And that's one of the areas that I really love working on, is exactly that. Because you can grow a portfolio with very little capital. Another area that I really enjoy, which maybe on the next time I join you guys on podcasts, I'll spend more time going over wholesaling. But I wanted to talk a little bit about fix and flips, because for me, fix and flips are one of my favorite areas that we're doing right now, because profits are so big. Because there's so many properties, you can come on a market and essentially undercut the market and sell your properties really fast because there's so much profit in the deals. So, I'm going to show you some tax properties, some on market properties here of things that you can do that we're currently doing. I'm going to even show you a couple properties that we have currently in rehab, but it can make such a big impact on not only what's possible, but what we're currently doing. So let me see here. Oh no. Hold on a second. Let me get this out of the way. This. Yeah, I'm gonna move over to this slide here. So here's one of the properties that the renovation is almost done. It's a property in Arkansas. Now this particular property we bought, so I'm gonna go back to the top here. We bought this property for $1,718. Okay. So I'm not saying that everybody had, necessarily wants to take on this big of a rehab or extensive, but really we're only putting about 40,000 into it. Okay. And so most investors, they get worried, about certain things. In this case, this actually had, structurally, exteriorly, it was sound. So we felt great about bidding on it. We got it at a great price. So it was very little risk, right? And we bought, so we bought for 1,700, and because we're using we're very systemized in our approaches of renovations and how we do it, it's going to sell for about 140,000. And it's not necessarily from luck, not from a hot market, but from repeatable systems built exactly for that kind of a deal. So here's the actual house when we got it. That's what it looked like. So we bought it because the main house was secure. There was definitely some water issues with the in this carport area, so the roof in the carport area needs some work. I'll show you that here in a minute. And in this particular, property, a lot of people may have passed on it, maybe not. Now when we bought it, actually the windows were boarded up, so we couldn't really see in there. And and it wasn't like a hidden gem. It wasn't like a simple renovation, but it's a very small property. It's about 1,200 square feet or 1,100 square feet. So no one else, raised their panel bought it. We got it at minimum bid. There was a little bit of fire damage in the kitchen, but it wasn't fire damage like there's holes in the roof. It wasn't, it definitely wasn't a tear down because it was secured, but that's what a lot of people may have thought, without doing further investigation. But because we did our research up front, we knew we were getting a good deal going in. And why we bought this, why others passed, the difference between, comes down to preparation, right? We had tax deed expertise. We understood the title risk, redemption periods, and how to evaluate the process. We had automated due diligence, process of avoiding comps, really getting proper repair costs, and you know, and got rid of all the red flags before we bid on it. And then and even so with this, you guys, we bought this without ever actually going to the property. We bought it remotely. We had someone bid on our behalf. We bought this property remotely. And there's certain things and tools, and some of you guys on this training might have some of these tools, like the construction management software that we use, where we have every scope of work, vendor, dollars, everything's tracked. And that way we have real confidence in our renovation process before we get started. And for some of you guys, some of you might end up wanting to come along with us. We about 6 times a year we take a small group of people to an auction and then actually take them through a renovation in markets that we're actually doing deals in, where we already have the teams established that you can take advantage of. And so there's things like that we do from time to time, but we do that more on a qualification basis. We only let so many people come along with us to that. We want to make sure, we're working with the most serious, but this is the kind of stuff that we're seeing. So, most investors and untrained, trained investors, they either make one or two mistakes. They assume that nothing needs to be done, or they minimize the construction, and they miss out on the details. And so you need to understand the distinction across between both of those scenarios. So what other investors saw was, hey, there could be a little bit of, the house is boarded up. It was in a remote location, which it really isn't. It's about an hour. Blytheville is about an hour outside of Memphis, Tennessee. So it's what we call a ripple market, as well as we had done our research and we know that there was a huge investment in distill plants there, about $2 billion recently. And so, housing needs are on the rise. We estimated maximum repairs, going into this. A lot of people say, hey, I don't have a local contractor or local relationships. I don't know how permitting works and all these things. There's always excuses, guys. There's always excuses not to do things. But we knew the structure was strong, the exterior structure was sound just based on our based on the photos and the on-site inspection we had done beforehand. We got it so cheap that almost, you get a property that cheap for a couple grand, it's hard to lose on, right? And there's a strong demand in the area for property, especially renovated property. And so most of that was surface damage and other things. We did have to, change out some things, and I'll show you what happened. And a lot of times, as long as the structure is sound, properties can look worse than they actually are, And so again, we don't generally, we're not just going to jump on everything, but in some cases, like even in this case, we changed out the windows. We had to take out the sheetrock and do new sheetrock and do a bunch of things, fix the roof repairs, but we were able to repair the roof instead of change the whole roof, trim things back, everything else that way. And when we look at it, you know, we're able to, avoid triggering some of unnecessary permit triggers, keep the project moving along. Fortunately, this isn't a market that has really, fairly low, you know, fairly easy to get permits done as well. So we had to clean out the interior just because there was a fire in there. You can't leave any of the sheetrock. Remove all the insulation, remove the drywall. We had to clean up the cabinets and the flooring, inspect everything. But at the end of the day, we are using, we're able to utilize low cost labor versus expensive labor. We're paying 15 to 25 bucks an hour instead of 860, $120 an hour for the demolition, trash removal, site debris, landscaping, prep, materials, all the major stuff we're able to do pretty cheaply. And some things we had to use a little bit of skilled trades, but most of it we're able to keep the construction costs down. So our total construction cost is about $40,000 on this deal. It's like 39,000 and some change. And then plus the $1,718 we spent on it, we're into about 42 grand, and it'll sell for 140. So after realtor fees and all the other stuff, we'll end up making about $85,000 on this deal. And then, utilizing our software, we're breaking down every scope of work, everything that we're doing across the board, preventing, all that makes a big difference. And so, essentially, this is kind of what it looks like in numbers at the end of the day. And we're just about to pop this property on the market within the next 2 weeks, and we've only been renovating it for 3 weeks now. So a little bit longer than 4 weeks, about 40 days, 45 days start to finish. And, we were able to get the materials, low cost label, we got electrical and plumbing done cheaply, and even replacing the HVAC in this case, as far as the condensers and things like that. Um, and then we just use our standardized kind of level one rehab, everything that we put into a level one rehab as far as the final interior finishes. Okay. So when we look at that, you know, when I look at a scenario like that, this is actually, let me show you, see if I can pull up some of that renovation. So, hold on, let's just bring it back up. 1 second here. So, I'll actually see if I can share some of these things with you, just so you guys can see what's going on. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that. So this is that the house is actually on Main Street. So here's how it looks when we got it, right? The interior, it looks worse than it is though, oftentimes. So there was some of the fire damage areas up here in that kind of top area. You could see where we had to look at some things there. This is as we cleared it out. And once it was cleared out, there was a few boards, few things we need to replace, wherever there's anything burnt. Here, if you guys can see some of this, we had to take out even in a couple areas, a little bit of flooring, Okay, so in a lot of ways, this was kind of a gut job. It was just such a small house. It didn't take that much to fix it. And then once we cleaned it up, here's where it started looking like this, right? And then we started putting it back together. So now it's all opened up. There was some problems with the roof. We've got the roof repairs done, as far as the carport and some of those areas. Here, this is the final repair on it. And then here's where it was at sheetrock. That's interesting, you guys. So now it's all cleaned up, everything's coming back together. As you can see there. And here's the roof before and after it was rehabbed. So there was some roof issues, but the whole roof wasn't bad. So we were able to go and clear that out, fix that, and repair that without necessarily have to change the entire roof. There's our construction crew on it. And we actually um, placed a lot of the windows and everything else as well. So all in all, this is gonna be a really nice house for the next buyer. Here's some of the new windows, new things on it. Here's when it got to tape and float, right? As far as now it's getting to the final stages. So next week they're putting the cabinets and finish work in, and it's pretty much gonna be all done. So and we are able to get through it because it's a small rehab very quickly. So there's the new water heater, new things we're putting in there across the board. So when we talk about renovations, that that that's going to take us a total of about 6 weeks start to finish before it's back on the market. And if you're prepared going in, we bought it, then immediately we can start getting an inspection done, get contractors out there and get things moving. You could get in and out of these properties fairly quickly. Especially now, the one thing I will say with construction rehabs is you want to do it during the time frame that during the time that you want to be doing your quiet title while you're getting the renovations done. Here's another project that was a bigger rehab. So this is a much bigger house, 3,000 square feet. And here's what we're doing on that one right now. So this one, actually, we had to get licensed, brand new electrical throughout the whole house. We had to clean out one of the back rooms. There's actually the main structure of the house, but someone had done an addition where the roof was coming in a little bit, and there's a hole in the roof. But overall, the main structure was very sound. Now it looked terrible. Like I actually, this is one of the rare cases where I actually went out to check on it. So, about 13 rehabs that were going on out there. Plus, we're prepping for the upcoming Arkansas auctions. So I actually went out there to this property, and it had a dead possum in it and all kinds of fun stuff. And it looked terrible when you look at it. I mean, when you look at it initially, this was the area where there was a water damage in the back corner, and that looks terrible, but it's not necessarily always as costly as you think it is. Here's after we came in and started, fixing that, right? Where that one, there's one room, there was only one room in the whole house that had any issues. The whole rest of the house was completely sound as far as water issues, anything else. So it definitely needed still renovation, but you see this back corner of this addition here. That's the area that needed a full, some full fixing. But this house we got for $20,000, and you can see for too long, look at it. It just looks like brand new, right? Back to how it should have been. As they're changing the roof out on it, fixing everything up on it. Okay, now once it's done, obviously it looks a lot better than it did, and matches the current roof. new electrical through the whole house all the way out, everything else. So right now they just finished up the inspections on the electrical because it did need brand new electrical in the house. It was required by the city on this one. And that's ran across the board. So, but the rest of the house is in really good shape. And now you can see they've already started replacing some of the windows, sheetrock, everything else, is getting cleaned up. I don't know why that picture looked weird. But this one's moving right along. This is another one that'll be on the market probably 1st of September. And we bought it for 20,000, putting about 80,000 in renovation into it, and it'll sell on the market for about $350,000. So my question to you guys is, how many of those do you need to do a year to really be doing a little bit better, right? And if you're doing, a couple of those deals a year, you're making an extra two, three, 400, $500,000 a year. If you took those funds and put it into rental properties, like some of the things I was just showing you with the rentals, could some of these properties have been rental properties? Sure. In this case, we're mostly flipping the properties because the market has such a demand for renovated properties right now that they're moving so fast. But could I have turned them into rentals? Sure. The numbers would have worked really well, especially on some of the smaller properties for rentals. Some of the properties we're only into for 5, 6 grand, put 15 into it, even for 20 grand, even if you're getting $1,000 a month, that's 12,000 a year on a $20,000 investment. And those properties are worth about 100 grand, 120 grand after they're done. So it's really close to the scenario that I just went through with you guys on rentals. But if you had an extra, 200, 300 grand coming in from fix and flips, and then you take all that money and you buy up 5, 6 rentals a year, what happens over you do that over 3, 4, 5 years? And right now we're seeing an opportunity in the marketplace we haven't seen. There's a lot less competition at tax auctions this year than we've seen before, in the previous, last 6, 7 years. And so there's a lot of good stuff going on. And I'm going to turn it back over to Steve and Shade here in just a second. Um, and we can talk about some other things. I do see a good question that just popped up. Do we also pick up tax sale land deals? Definitely. You can definitely pick up land. On average, you get land for like 10 cents on the dollar. The thing with land, the target right now is you buy it cheap and sell it cheap. Because there's so many properties coming on the markets and all the markets has softened a little bit. Land also softens quite a bit. So if you want to move it fast, you got to sell it cheap. So we want to buy it for 10 cents on the dollar, sell it for 30 cents on the dollar to somebody else. Either way, you're still doubling your money. So it's a great deal. But yeah, I mean, some of the biggest land deals. I mean, I know we've got one property in Michigan we picked up for about a piece of commercial land for 27K and tax value on it's over $500,000. So there's lots of definitely land deals out there that make sense. And we've got tons and tons on our membership site and on our website. We've got tons and tons of examples of land deals across the board. So whether it's land or structures, I'll buy anything that's a deal. The reason why I like working on structures right now is it's cheaper to repair properties than it is to build new ones too. And typically with land, I wouldn't tell anyone to hold on to land right now. I just tell you to buy it cheap, sell it cheap, get rid of it, generate some capital, build it up. Once you have enough capital, right, or you've got a good enough passive income, then if you want to buy and hold land for long term, you can definitely look at doing that too. So I think Steve and Shane are going to come back on here. Oh, there he is. Hey guys, and then
Right.
I'll come back on. The last 20 minutes or so, we can just really open up a Q&A, open forum, or 30 minutes. What do you guys prefer?
Oh, you're muted, Steve.
I am muted. Um, yeah, 35 minutes, 40
Okay,
minutes,
cool.
something like that.
Well, I'll be back in the chat. You guys, I did put out the link one more time. If you want to schedule a time to sit down and really figure out what strategies you should be focused on and what your action plan should be, make sure to use the link in the chat, schedule a time with one of our real estate experts to really sit down with you and figure out what can you do in the next 12 months to significantly impact your finances and get you on track for your goals. Okay. So I also did mention some of the 3 days we had coming up and some of those things, and we talked a little, some of that stuff too. So, but anyway, Steve and Shade, the floor is yours.
Awesome. We appreciate it, Tom. It was kind of interesting to go through some of those properties that me and Shade had researched and then to go out there and purchase them and then see the rehab being done on them. It's always interesting to find out, exactly what the condition is, because in that case, we do have to judge the book by the cover. And so that's the reason it was important. In fact, on that house that Tom showed you that we picked up for $1,700, that one we said we'd only pay, $3,000 for, because we knew that it had issues that were going to needed. But once we got into it, the issues really weren't as bad as we thought, and we really didn't think would win it that cheap. I think I put 2,000, 3,000, something like that, and ended up winning it for $1,700. It wasn't on our premium list, but it actually ends up being a great deal that can make us at least $80,000 on it.
Yeah, yeah, there are lots of interesting properties like that. We don't always end up acquiring the properties that we're going after, or at least the ones that are the top ones on our list. Sometimes those ones are more aggressively bid, but that's also why we target a variety of properties that we're looking at. In those cases, yeah, we can't get on the inside of the property, and so you're limited as to how much you can really figure out about the property from the outside, which is one of those reasons why we love states like Michigan and New York that provide us with more information, that help us make decisions. There's more states that are doing it too. I think more states are catching on to the fact that if they provide more information, that they can attract more buyers and online. And so we've seen a lot of growth with that. But yeah, I thought it was pretty cool looking through the properties as well. Pretty neat to see their progress and to see them getting close.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting, it's exciting. We want you guys to be doing it. And like Tom mentioned, if you'd like to learn, see if this strategy is right for you, go ahead and sign up for a strategy call. Either way, you're going to get pointed in the right direction. And then also, like you mentioned, we're going to be holding some 3-day events. And so for our members, we give you a special discounted price. In fact, we're going to be raising that price next week, even for our membership. So if you're interested, let us know, and we can get you in that $299 membership price. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a couple of different things. We're going to talk about the best tax lien auctions we think that are coming up over the next 30 days. We're going to talk about the best tax deed auctions over the next 30 days. And then we're going to go look at Michigan. We talked about Michigan in a pre-auction, a pre-sale review a couple of weeks ago. And now we're going to go back and look at some of the properties that sold in Michigan and kind of get an idea of where the market's at.
Tax lien opportunities are kind of interesting because they exist all over the country, but there's also online opportunities that exist. And these are all online auctions that we're looking at right here. But chances are you may live in an area that uses tax liens or near or close to a state that does. Here are 5 different tax lien auctions that are happening in August here that are good sales, worth pursuing here. Clay County, Missouri, which we looked at that a little bit here and some of the properties there. They've got some very valuable properties in that auction and a lot of stuff that looks pretty good. And then you could see all the different sales. I don't know how many sales were in Mississippi, at least 30 or 40, maybe even more. Oh, you're muted.
40, 45, something like that. There's quite a few auctions taking place, and I believe this is the second year that these Mississippi counties have moved over to online auctions. I think that some of them did it last year, but the bidding rates, seem to be pretty good because there's just not as much competition. There's nobody to, scram, you know, scramming to go ahead and try to get into Mississippi tax sales. We see that in Florida. We'll see some of these areas where there's more competition. And so, like we mentioned earlier, if we can get a better interest rate return in another state on valuable pieces of property, we're okay with that. And if you don't mind waiting for a redemption period and you don't mind sitting on your money as long as you're earning a good interest rate. Some of these other states where you're going to get better rates or less competition are going to be good, and Mississippi is a good example. There's also, we just put one here, but there's a number of different New Jersey auctions that are opening up this month. I would probably say 20, maybe 10 to 20, something like that. And these are good opportunities in New Jersey using the real auction platform, which many of us who've done online auctions use that system and understand that system.
Yeah, New Jersey is an interesting area because basically every major town or city holds their own tax auctions, and so there's tons of tax sales. They all have their own websites, at least many of them do on real auction, and so they are pretty easy sales to participate in, and they provide information there to make it easy to participate. So yeah, pretty good round of opportunities there. Tennessee, I know they're holding some sales here their uh, on the properties that they're selling. I think what they just wrapped that one up. But
Oh,
Lake County,
I have the wrong date on that.
oh,
That's
is
the
it
old date.
9-4?
Um, I think it's like near the end of the month. We can go
Oh,
take a
okay.
look at it, but yeah, I think it's in a week or two.
Nice. Nice. Well, and uh, that one's on Gubbies, which again, there are so many different auction platforms right now that you can probably get reduce competition by using some of these different services that have less competition in general, like Govies or Zeus Auctions is another one. Lake County, Indiana, is holding their tax lien sales. They're starting on the 4th of September, and they have 9,076 liens that are available. Just thousands and thousands of tax liens that are available. A lot of good opportunities there, to pick up some great liens here, very secure liens.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and we talk so much about tax deeds because we have so many of our students that are interested in acquiring property. And that's part of the reason why we talked about tax lien risk today and also, talking about tax liens here is there's a lot of investors out there that don't want to take the time, the research, they're not interested in doing rehab, and they already have funds set up. So let's say that you have a self-directed account or something like that you'd like to turn over and move over into tax lien certificates. This is a way that you can do, just stage one due diligence, decide which tax liens that you're interested in. You don't have to worry about the on-site auctions, and you're still guaranteed a good interest rate return. And the thing about tax liens is even if it's a small percentage, if you buy enough tax liens, you're going to acquire property, except for in states, where it goes to a deed auction like Colorado or Florida, and when you do pick up the property, you could turn around and flip it for not, for 50 cents on the dollar and you only paid, a small percentage because you just paid the back taxes to get it. You didn't have to bid up the price like you would in a tax deed auction.
Well, yeah, that's the real secret of tax liens is that if you buy enough liens, eventually you're going to acquire property, and when you acquire property, you're going to acquire it for pennies on the dollar. It's going to cost almost nothing compared to what to the profitability in it. And so, yeah, that's going to happen if you just buy enough liens here. It's bound to happen eventually. Now, like Steve was saying, we focus on tax deeds a lot though as well because we have a lot of students that are trying to build their working capital, and tax deeds are probably the best vehicle to do that. There are a lot of great sales, So the first one being Ulster County, which we covered in the pre-sale list. You can see there were 160 or more, 180 properties total that are being offered, and there's probably at least 30 nice homes, in that auction. There's also many pieces of land there. We saw pieces of land there that didn't make any sense, and there's also pretty good opportunities there on some bigger pieces of land that do look pretty good and they have substantial value. So again, not all the properties in any of the auctions are going to be attractive. It's always going to be a matter of trying to weed out the good from the bad in every tax sale auction. I think, and that brings us to number two, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which they started holding sales on bid for assets a little. I don't know if it was maybe last year or the year before that they started doing it, but they've got a number of recurring sales now, so that it's not even just an annual sale, but they've got regular sales happening for Pennsylvania on bid for assets with properties starting as little as $1,600. It's essentially like an over-the-counter sale with these properties that they're offering up at that low of a price.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Philadelphia is kind of unique versus any other county within that state. And like Shade said, they actually hold these $1,600 auctions every single month. Really, they actually hold three different type of tax sales. They hold a tax lien foreclosure sales where essentially the law firm is foreclosing on the property and offering it up for the first time. So there's two different law firms that handle those sales, and they hold those auctions once a month. And then those two auctions, the properties that don't sell, get put into this $1,600 sale. So the opening bid on all of these properties, $1,600. We have a video that we looked at maybe 5, 6 months ago, and we saw many good deals that had already been rehabbed, and that were essentially currently put back onto the market and made huge profit margins. There's also a number of different Pennsylvania upset sales taking place this month, with Fayette County being held on the 21st and 22nd on bid for assets. There's some other ones as well. And what the upset sale is they foreclose on the property and you acquire it. You acquire the property, but it hasn't gone through that judicial foreclosure, which means that if it does have mortgages or judgments, they could stick along with other types of government issued liens. So there is good opportunity in those upset sales. We just need to research them differently, almost like a bank sale. But there's some pretty good opportunity through the upset sale because those are the first time these properties are coming up for auction.
Yeah, in their first initial offering there's going to be some really good deals on properties, and not all of them are going to have outstanding obligations outside of that. Some may, and some may not. And so, yeah, good opportunities in the upset sales, and also very minimal competition. I would say there's probably less competition in some of the upset sales than almost any other auctions that we've watched. Um, Polk County, Florida, also has a sale happening here on the 20th. They've got regular, consistent tax deed auctions happening every single month through Real Auction, and those are pretty simple sales to track and to conduct research on. Everything about the way that the Florida conducts their tax deed auctions is an example to the rest of the states on how to do it well and how to make it easy. But there's also Michigan tax sales that are happening. The sales started about a week and a half ago, and they're going through the rest of this month and into September. And there are some excellent deals here in the Michigan sales, which we love to participate in every year, just because they provide us with good information and it's a good online system. And on top of that, all the Michigan sales, or at least most of them, are conducted out of one website, which makes it a lot easier for us when it comes to finding the information, participating in the auctions. Rather than needing to go to a new place every time for each one of these, we can pretty well operate from the one website to participate.
Yeah, it makes a huge advantage. In fact, we're going to be talking about Michigan today. In fact, one thing that we mentioned is that when we look at the Michigan auctions, sometimes the first part of the auctions end up getting some more competition. And so when I was going through and looking for sold results, I looked at the first two sales, and we've got some good examples to look at. But as I looked at even the more recent sales, some of those investors that were gung-ho there in the beginning spent up their money. And so as the auction keep going on throughout the month, that's usually when we actually see some of the very best deals come up and that are purchased. In fact, that's the same thing that we do at the auction. If there's a property that we can pick up for a good price in the beginning of the auction, we're going to go ahead and do that. But I would say that probably 70-80% of our deals end up in the last half of the auction, where people have already kind of got out of the high bidding there in the beginning. People have already spent some of their money, and so we'll always wait. We'll never leave the end of the auction, because those are usually when the best deals are going to be taking place. And that doesn't matter if it's an on-site auction or an online auction. If somebody only has so much money and they spend it in the early part of the auction, that means there's going to be less competition later on.
Yeah, which it is true that with every sale, even sales that are just going to last for a day, the sales in the second half of the day are always going to be more profitable than the ones in the first half of the day. Competition does end up kind of using up their money and spending it up and leaving more opportunities here as the day progresses. Michigan tax deeds, though, what we're going to be looking at are some of their the sales here in August that just occurred. Michigan is a tax deed state, So what that really means is that state law sets a redemption period for property owners. And at the end of that redemption period, counties have the power to foreclose on those properties and offer them up for auction. So that's essentially what's happening in Michigan is the counties are waiting out the redemption period there to foreclose on these properties so that they can offer them up at auction to the highest bidder, using a premium bidding system. But part of state law also requires them to have signs in front of the property with a picture as well. And that has kind of evolved into them also providing us with descriptions of the property and even interior images of a lot of the properties as well. And so, again, probably some of the best information we get out of any of the states, from any of the states here in the country. And as I was saying, the majority of these are on one website, which is tax-sales.info. Now, I guess I don't think this is actually a state-owned website, but they do happen to conduct the auctions for most of the counties in Michigan. There's only a couple of counties that aren't using this website, which it's handy for us. It makes it easier for us because it means we can go to that site, to tax-sale.info, for all the sales almost across the state.
Yeah, in fact, it was kind of interesting. There was one auction that wasn't held. There was three auctions, I think, total that don't use tax-sale.info. And one of them was holding an online auction, and the other two were holding on-site auctions. And last week during our coaching call where we meet with our coaching students, we were looking at some of the results of that sale and saw some great properties. I can't remember if it sold for like 30,000, was worth 180, something like that. But
Yeah,
some
it was Lenawee County in Michigan was the one that did it on its own, and they actually had several really nice homes there that sold for just dirt cheap. Yeah, there was one that we saw a house there that sold for 40,000 that was valued at 180. And there's another deal right after that one that I have to pull up here. Several really good deals though, and what we noticed about those properties is they didn't bid up very high. They sold for a little over the opening bid amounts, but it was obviously there was a limited amount of competition there.
Yeah. So can you see my screen okay, Shade? I can't
Yeah,
see for some reason.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some Michigan auctions, and kind of like I talked about before, I kind of wish I would have looked at some of these later sales, because there was even some better deals within there. But we'll go ahead and look at what some of the ones that we pulled up. As we get into some of these that took place, you can even see better deals. And one thing that's kind of interesting is if we go ahead and look at the upcoming auctions, we can see that, there's a number of different sales taking place. And then what they have is they have a couple of sales here at the very end called the reoffer auction, where they go ahead and drop the opening bid amount and offer them again. So any of these properties that don't sell, and we'll see a number that didn't sell, will go ahead and be put in this reoffer sale. And then the properties that don't sell in there, they have this no reserve auction where it goes ahead and starts at $100. So there's going to be some pretty good opportunities. In fact, the property that Tom talked about that we picked up, that commercial piece of land, was last year in this no reserve sale.
Yeah, in fact, what's nice about this is the Michigan counties are smart, and what they do is they're able to kind of weed through their properties and change up pricing on them to make sure that they get sold. Because realistically, when we look at, there was a goat there. They took a picture of the goat.
Yeah,
Um,
the goat. They have a pet goat.
yeah, that is kind of funny here. Um, yeah, we can see all the information that we've got here with the Michigan properties here. They provide us with great information on the sales. We can also see exactly what property sold for. Yeah, we brought the property last year that was from this auction. But one thing that's nice though is that if a property has too high of an opening bid, or let's say there's just way too much owed in taxes on it, which we saw that with a bunch of sales just earlier in New York. We saw a bunch of properties there that had opening bids that were way too high for the property. Well, in Michigan, they end up fixing that themselves by holding their uh, first their reoffer, trying to sell those properties again. Which again, if they didn't get sold here in the first time, they get offered up again. But then if they don't get sold again, it's a sure sign that their minimum bid is too high, and so they lower that minimum bid down to just basically $100 to ensure that the property gets sold. And so if you don't get one of these properties in the first pass, or if you see a property that's pretty nice, but the opening bid is too high, if everybody else feels the same way, there's a good chance it'll end up in the reoffer auction or potentially in the no reserve.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So this property here ended up, it's on 10 acres. It ended up selling for 50 grand. It's valued about 180 to 200,000. I think Redfin had it at two. And these photos are a little bit older. I think they're about 10 years old. But we can get kind of an idea of it. So, I mean, in this scenario, let's say they picked it up for 50 and they put an additional 50 into it. Now, based on the condition, based on the fact that somebody was still living in it at the time, I don't think it would need that. You can see it had a new roof at the time, new siding, new windows. But even in that scenario, you're still making 80 to 100 grand off of this property, even picking it up for 50 grand.
Well, and it looks like all the big stuff has already been done. And what that means is that you could do like a lipstick rehab on it and it would look amazing because it already has new siding, new windows, new roof. And so you could basically take the money you are investing in, just put it on the inside to make the inside look beautiful. And the end of that, it would be a really nice property.
Yeah, I'll but I'll have to log into each one of these. Uh, this little property right here was kind of a little cabin property, but it's really kind of located in a pretty cool area. You can see it's right here on, this bay within the Great Lakes there. So you're talking about, less than a block from essentially the waterway and White Beach, all of those kind of things. So it's in a pretty cool little location. It ended up selling for
You can just go back. You don't have to log in again. Once you've logged in, it'll save it for a certain amount of time.
for some reason it's taken to me to another property though. Let me go back here real quick.
It's over 13,000.
Yeah, for 13,000. And it does need some work. When I looked up the ones that had been cleaned up, they were selling for more than that. But
It essentially has an assessed value of 80,000, and is valued closer to about 100,000, especially if you were to fix it up there. So for what they paid for it there, they paid very little for it.
yeah, and it's pretty tiny. Here's one that's even smaller than it. That's kind of similar. They're currently selling it for 160. So again, if we're looking at this property, let's say that we put in, you know, $40,000 into rehabbing it. Again, that's kind of like the deal that we showed you there with Tom, where yeah, it's going to take a little bit of work. This one will probably take less work, a lot less work than the one that we did there. But if you're into it to 30 grand, probably will sell between 140 to 160. It also has a garage there as well, which gives it additional benefit. Not a bad little property.
Yeah, well, and for 13,000, I mean, again, you're paying 13,000 for $100,000 property. You're paying about 13% of value. Tremendous deal.
Oh, that's irritating. For some reason, it's not letting me log in each time.
Oh, you know what? You can probably, I'll bet if you go and reload them after they come up, if you reload them, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I tried. That's what I thought too.
Oh, that's silly.
I might have to click on the links instead.
There
So
we
this
go.
little house, yes, sold for 26 grand. Kind of talk a little bit about it here. Let's see,
Yeah, the
located.
notes are always really good too on all these purchases. We can see it's valued at about 112,000 here.
Yeah, and kind of looking at the estimated between 107 to 130, they're missing a lot of information here. And sometimes when they do that, that actually donks the price down on Redfin. So of course, we're always going to check the current comps within the area before determining exactly what our high bid would be. But there's a lot of homes in here that sold between 10 to 30 grand that have the ability to make 50 to $100,000 profit on them.
Does this one have interior images too? It has a lot of photos. Maybe they're all exterior.
I think it might.
Oh no, they did get interior.
So, it's pretty dusty, pretty dirty, but, you know, it looks pretty dry for the most part. A lot of
Yeah.
cobwebs. I mean, in this kind of scenario, we're going to probably be getting a dumpster or two and taking out all the trash. But other
Oh,
than
it's
that,
perfect for a rehab though. For a
yeah.
cheap rehab, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect for what we would call lipstick rehab. These aren't the kind of properties we're going to be putting in expensive type furnishings. We're going to be repainting it, putting in new carpet and, maybe adding some appliances and things like that. But otherwise, it's structurally sound, and that's kind of what we're looking for. Uh, you know, in fact, willing to pay a little bit more for something that's structurally sound because we know we don't see, big, huge water spots or the roof, the ceiling falling down because of water damage or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, from what we can see on the inside, minus taking out this stuff that's there, doing basically like a dump run, you could clear the entire house out, and it's all dry. It's you could use it as is, but what it means is that if we just replace the flooring, did some repainting on it, that the rest of the house is pretty much good. We maybe replace a few of the few things, maybe sinks and or possibly toilets, a few things like that. But it's not going to be a major rehab with this property because it's pretty much all there and it's all dry. And this would be a you could turn around and flip this property because of how cheap they picked it up, but this would also be a good long-term rental.
One thing I just noticed, this is a joke, but this property comes with a ghost. See that orb? I
Yeah,
don't know if that's an orb or not.
I'll bet a lot of these properties probably come with ghosts.
So you've got a ghost to accompany the property as well. But you can see that it's been vacant. There's plenty of, cobwebs and stuff like that. But overall, it's a sound little property that they were able to pick up for a good deal.
Yeah. Well, and it's a simple property, and what we're looking for more than anything with properties is a sign that the owner that lived in them, cared for the properties. The property was loved at some point, and that somebody was willing to invest time or effort into keeping the property up. That's a lot of times what we're looking for. And signs like anything that's left over from landscaping is a sign of somebody that's taking care of the property. If you're going to go through the process to take care of landscaping, generally things that go wrong with the house, you're also going to be taken care of.
Yeah, well, and some of these properties, maybe something like this, we're going to have a more difficult time, and I don't know, but let's just say we're having a more difficult time selling it or finding a rehab person within that area. I mean, it's right there on the water. You've got some beautiful parks within the area, and this is just this little trailer right here. But when we get into the condition is still in great shape, and the value of it, is about 100 grand or so. And so in this scenario, maybe we don't even rehab it at all. We just clean it up, we put a lock on it, and we go through quiet title and we sell it for 70 or 80 grand. We might not even worry about going through the rehab of it. But when you look at you can see the water right there, right behind, right across the street. Kind of cool.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and yeah, this would be a great one just to basically rent out as it is. And with properties like this too, it's not hard to find long-term buyers. If, in other words, I wouldn't be surprised if the first tenants that come in to rent it want to buy the property, if they can long term, and that's something that you can work out with them. In fact, you could probably have the property collecting income or rent while you're taking it through a quiet title action, and while they're getting set up to be able to pay for the property whatever the market pricing is that you're looking to sell it for. If you're going to sell it for 100,000, you could get all that stuff in place while you're renting it out to them.
Yeah, in fact, they had so many pictures, it took forever to get through them. It's got a nice little one-car garage there as well. But as you look at the interior of it, it's really in pretty good shape. In fact, I think we looked at this property before the auction and we saw that telescope and everything within there.
Oh yeah, I do recognize that telescope. Oh, and for 28,000, they've just paid very little for it. I mean, this is a property that's probably going to rent out for close to $1,000 a month. And again, you're just paying very little. It could be have itself paid off here in probably less than 3 years.
Yeah,
Um,
about 1,240. So
oh
between
yeah,
about $1,200 a month. But everything on it is really pretty clean and ready to go. I mean, even if you just put in, let's say, $5,000, you could probably sell it even just doing a quick, easy lipstick rehab on it because the paint's still good. I mean, look at the paint. The paint's still good, everything's still good. Just cleaning it out, fixing a few things on it, and getting it ready to sell, and really, and kind of improving it may be worth it in this particular location.
yeah. So they picked it up for about you know less than 30% of value. Is what they paid on it. A great deal. I mean, both in what they paid if they want to rent it out, if they want to turn around and flip it. The price point that they're at is awesome because it allows them to do either.
Yeah, this one here, they ended up paying a little bit more. It's got some pretty good benefits with it, 66,000. And, it's valued about 195,000, built in 1972. So it's not incredibly old. I mean, it's old, but it's not really, really old. And, nice three-bedroom, one bath. And again, if we were to go through all these photos, which would take some time, overall in pretty good shape, needs some things done to it, but cleaning it up, and you can see it's got, it's a pretty good size home with a basement there as well, and then a nice big garage.
Yeah, walkout basement. In fact, it looks like. Um,
Yeah, so picked it up again for what, 27 cents on the dollar, under 30 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, which is another great deal, and this is probably one that wouldn't take a whole lot of money invested into it, to get it resold. But yeah, they picked it up for a third of value, which is tremendous. Another one here, what this one sold for 92,000,
Yeah,
valued at 232.
they ended up paying more than we would pay, and part of that has to do again with the condition of it. Somebody's looking at it thinking, well, it's not going to take a whole lot for us to rehab this property, and also looking there within the market value. So they paid, we would probably have probably topped out about 70,000 on it. But again, there's still some $130,000 worth of profit. So even in this where they paid more than we would, even if they put $40,000 in rehab, they still have a chance to make $100,000. And so any of these deals, if you can make a good $100,000 off of doing a rehab and you can find, and do it fairly quickly, even paying even paying 90,000 for it, they're still getting it for so much cheaper than you could any other way. And you still have a chance to make $100,000. A lot of people, when they're buying a $230,000 house, they're hoping to make $20,000 or $30,000 flipping it because they paid 70 or 80 cents or even more than that for picking it up. And that's picking it up as a distressed property. But at tax sales, this sold for 40 cents on the dollar, 35 cents, 40 cents on the dollar, something like that. And even though this is more than we would have paid, there's still a chance to make $100,000 plus.
Yeah, I mean, well over $100,000 of potential profitability on it, and these are properties that just sold like in the last couple days. These are sales that are happening like right now. They've got more auctions that are occurring here this week, this coming week here, and will be clear through September. This is a nice house. I mean, look at the potential this house has. Holy cow, 341,000 picked up for 106. That was a home run. Somebody did awesome on that property. They're going to do so well on that.
Yeah, well, and you can kind of see, this was what, 6, 7 years ago, and you can kind of see the difference between it now and then, but it's just kind of dirtier. Everything else is the same, and as you're looking through, we can see where it was as of, you know, 6, 7 years ago, and still in good shape. People are still living within the property, and at least when the photos were taken, they may have moved out since that time. But we can see it's a good solid structure. It's got good size to it. And
It's crazy. The buyer has a legitimate chance to make $200,000 on this purchase.
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah,
insane. That's a crazy for $100,000 purchase, to have that kind of potential, to have that kind of value. This is a nice property. How big is it? It's pretty big, 2,400 square feet. Um, yeah, it was picked up. I mean, the price wise, yeah, I'm surprised. That's a pretty low percentage of value to pay for a property with this kind of value in it, and it doesn't look like it would need that much in rehab. 30,000, 40,000 in rehab would probably do it. And if not, you've got lots of profitability to, do more, but you could probably get away with that. I mean, look, it's built in 92, so it's not that old of a property either. It's built after all the modern safety standards and building codes. And so, that you're not going to have to worry about it being overly old. The condition on it's decent. So 40,000 in rehab would probably take this property a long way and make it easy to get 350,000 out of it.
yeah. Well, you can see the home was completely redone in 2012. Now that's a while ago, but 2012 is a lot better than 1992. So meaning that it as far as things that matter, windows, those kind of things, those have all been redone. And again, it got purchased in 2018. So, like Shade said, I mean, there is $250,000 worth of potential profit in it. And if they go ahead and spend 50 or 60 grand on rehabbing it, they're still making nearly 200,000. And overall, it's if you were to look through the photos, yeah, there's some stuff in the yard. There's an old Corvette. But either way, it's still completely a solid. Everything looks like, I mean, really a clean pressure washer and doing a few things to it could really make the whole outside look a lot better.
Oh yeah, I mean, just getting the outside of it cleaned up would clean it would fix the curb appeal and increase its value there. At least we know what somebody would be willing to pay. But if you put a little bit of money on the inside of the property as well, yeah, that property would be a rock star. It would do awesome with that.
Yeah, here's an example of just a lot that sold, and I mean, we could go through, you know, hundreds of these between the auctions done, but it sold for 3,200. It's got an SEV of 16,000. So what that means is we're going to double it as far as what they think the market value would be. So, 32,000 looks like there is some improvement on there. You've got power and water, utilities right there. So picking it up for 3,200, let's say it's worth, and Tom was talking about buying land for 10 cents on the dollar. This would be a good example. Picked it up for 3,200, maybe would go ahead and sell it as is for 15 or 16 grand, make 10 grand on it and sell it quickly.
It kind of looks like the place where they find a body. Yeah, I don't know that. Just thinking about that little whatever that cinder block thing is.
No, that's I think it's a
No,
pump house. I don't think I don't think that's where the serial killer was.
that's a clean house.
Yeah.
Picked up for 180
Yeah,
and
exactly.
SEV of 119. So that means that the assessed value on the property is basically 240,000.
Well, and look at
The
the location on this as well. Right here close to this little St. Mary's Lake in a pretty nice area with some really nice homes within here.
Yeah, it's a very nice middle class neighborhood. When was that built? I didn't see that. In 80, 67?
67.
Yeah.
Again, this was another one that they ended up paying higher than we would have paid for it. And I want to include a couple of them saying that, some homes are going to bid above our max bid. If that was never the case, then we would win every single property. And so as we're going through, we're researching. Now, part of the reason is because of this area. A lot of the other homes have a lot higher value than that one does. And so I think that they're kind of looking there within the market and they figure based on the condition and the location of this home, if they can pick it up for less than 50 cents on the dollar, they're doing pretty good on it.
Yeah, well, they probably are. I mean, maybe it probably is one of the cheapest properties, in the neighborhood there at that price point. It also means, that it would probably be a good candidate here for potential flip in a rehab here. Maybe we can get some more details here on it. Because I mean, certainly they paid a lot, but it's not like they're in any trouble of not being profitable. I mean, they probably still have the potential here to nearly double their money
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that.
for
Little
33
homes.
thousand. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
pretty clean one.
Oh, I was looking at this property earlier. Forgot about that one. There's this commercial property sold for really cheap, 2,200.
Oh
But
yeah. It's interesting. Commercial lots, especially like commercial lots that are inside cities, we're always interested in because they have the potential for rental use. They have the potential for use that somebody may want to get under contract. So we're always interested in those. This house looks like a pretty good deal at 33,000. Its SEV of 44,000 means that it has an assessed value of about 90. If we were to look at the value here, I'm not sure where it would stand at for probably over 100,000 here. So where they're into it or the point they're at isn't very high. They haven't paid too much for it, probably less than a third of value.
yeah, and it's here within Battle Creek, so we're in a good sized city as far as small cities concerned. So we're going to be able to find contractors within the area. It looks like it's at the time was currently still being lived in, uh, and valued at about 130,000. So again, let's say that they're into it. They put another $30,000. Now I think this would be a $10,000 to $20,000 lipstick rehab, clean it up, sell it quick. But let's say that they even put 30 into it. Well, they still have the chance to make, they're into it 60. They could still make, what is that, $70,000?
Hmm.
70, $80,000 off of rehabbing if they were to go ahead and put $20,000 or $30,000 into it.
Yeah, a tremendous amount of value. And they bought it cheap enough that if they wanted to, they could probably just turn around and sell it as is without doing anything. But the reason why they'd pursue a rehab is because it would help them increase their overall profitability. That's a good deal for 16,000. That looks like a nice little house.
Yeah, yeah, not too bad. It looks like there's a few trouble issues, but overall looks decent. This little shed or garage is probably going to need some work, but picked up for 16 grand.
It's interesting they don't have an SCV on it.
Yeah, I kind of found that interesting as well. You can see it had value about 94 grand or so.
Yeah, picked up for very little. I mean, they basically have probably paid about, 15, 16% of value for this property, um, which is fairly close to being usable right now. Oh, that's interesting too. That's a commercial professional like office center there for units 1, 3, and 6.
Yeah, there's five tax parcels being sold it as a single auction. Commercial land column. This is for 5 out of 6 condominium office located in a large commercial building.
Oh yeah, it's everything except for unit 2. So it's units 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, essentially, you're purchasing all now. It's been boarded up. That was probably to help protect the property, and you definitely need to look into this. But with something like this is where we can get so much information from the the city about what's going on, what's been done. Looks like there was, some type of
Urgent
school or
care.
something, urgent care, family practice. We could look and see when this was last in business. And, obviously this is a huge type project, but there is these kind of commercial properties out there for investors that are interested where, to rebuild something like this would cost a huge amount of money. Now, if you could turn those into rental properties, take those suites and turn them into condos. Is that something that's possible? Well, you could find out from the city, or creating different suites for different offices. You might be able to, I think if they're individual condos, after you went ahead and got it rehabbed and got it going, you could probably sell those condos as well, individually versus even renting them out.
Yeah, I mean the assessed value on the property is like 500,000 roughly, from the county. And the replacement value on the property is probably over $1 million. Probably well over $1 million. I don't think you could replace that for much less than that. And so, yeah, it is kind of interesting. It's an interesting property. It would be interesting to get a look inside. There's a lot of square footage there, though, that's not currently being used.
Yeah, in fact, let's do something real quick.
The location looks pretty good too.
We'll do this as Tom gets ready to come back in. So you can see that there's, a Dodge dealership right here. Here's Chick-fil-A, Domino's, Burger King, IHOP, hotel right there, Harbor Freight.
Yeah,
You
there's
know,
no reason that shouldn't be getting used.
yeah, I mean you're right there kind of within town. I wonder what would happen all in here.
And there's no street side images. Oh, there is. There's a street side image. Oh yeah, that's nice looking. The building looks decent too, even in those images. What year are the images from?
This is from 2023. And, even at that time, like, I don't know when this building was built, but my guess would be in the 70s. We could go ahead and look at the county record and it might say here when it was built as well.
It looks like a 70s property.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. Well, they didn't pay too much for it, it looks like.
No, they ended up paying 88,000 for it.
Oh, it's a pipe burst with internal damage. Oh, interesting. He's read into the comments here on it. It has a pipe burst with internal damage that cost $200,000, which is why it probably ended up in this situation.
Yeah.
An owner or somebody probably couldn't afford to deal with some of the maintenance.
Well, and whoever bought it, you hope and you would assume that they have some type of plan. But in something like this, we can look up from the city. I mean, they were able to pull this information, but we could find out all of the details by contacting the city, finding out more about it. And, when any of these kind of commercial properties, we can also look up the address. And usually with businesses, there's going to be a lot more information available than just a single family home on when that commercial property was last occupied, who rented it, who was using it. And so that helps us do more due diligence on these commercial properties to make sure that we're making a good investment.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Well, cool. We'll turn it over to you for a bit here, Tom, to wrap things up.
Definitely. Well, I think as far as, I did see one question. Someone asked what SEV means in
Oh,
the Q&A section.
state equalized value. It's a term that we see mostly with Michigan, though. And it's just basically how they go about their assessed. It's their way to say assessed. And we know it's roughly 50% of assessed. We have to double it. Yeah, that's basically what it means. So it's particular to Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and I did put the link one more time in the chat for those of you guys that want to sit down and have a one-on-one meeting and really figure out what your individual plan of action should be and what you guys should be doing this next 12 months. Because even though there's only a quarter left on the year, there's a whole nother, you got to start planning and taking action because all of this information, Stephen Shea just went over some amazing stuff, showed you all kinds of opportunities that are out there. But if you don't ever take action on it, it's just a nice thought, right? It's just watching other people do things without us doing it. So I definitely hope everybody on here is out there doing, not just learning, um, and really getting out there, making some things happen. I did see a question. What was the county you guys were looking at again in Michigan?
Oh, it was Lenawee. Lenawee was the county that didn't do their sale on tax-sale.info. They did it on I think it was maybe an on-site auction, or I don't know if it was online. I would have to look here again, but it
It,
was Lenawee County though.
it's
oh, it was
always
on
funny to me
Zeus.
how
Oh, that's
each
right.
county wants it, each county, like different counties, they all try to like act like they're individuals, you know what I mean? Rather than
Mm,
just go with the flow on stuff. Like in Florida, I feel like every other county, it's a different auction site.
yeah, very interesting. But good question. You guys have had awesome questions here. We've appreciated those, and feel free to ask any more if you want. We'll be sure to answer them here before the end.
Yeah, I mean this last few minutes, you guys, that's really what this is for, is to to give you the opportunity to really ask the questions that you guys want to ask, anything and everything. What your exit strategies for should be. Maybe next time I come on one of these, I'll spend more time just focused on the wholesaling, and the different attributes and aspects of that. And well, I see a question: how do you find a heat map on a property? You have to create heat maps. You can't really find them, and that's a whole different conversation. We're talking about, how we create heat maps and determine the right areas of the cities to dump into. But that's a big, we actually create our heat maps. So it's not like you're just going to be able to search out how do I find a heat map on Google. You actually, it's a process of taking the sold comps along with the tax auction properties, uploading them into, software use that sits on top of Google Maps and really gives us a good idea of what's going on in that market.
Yeah, in fact,
Um,
it's something that we teach within the membership as we have a whole training. In fact, I think we did it for the members maybe a month or so ago, where we essentially like Tom talked about, we download that information and we're able to upload information like Redfin data where we can really hone in on those particular markets. And so if we're just researching a couple of homes within a certain city or area, we may not create a heat map for that particular, property if we're only looking at one or two. But if we have multiple properties, for example, when we were bidding there in Arkansas, where we have many properties that we picked up, we created heat maps within those areas because we were going to bid on multiple properties to see which are going to be the hottest areas. Which ones are we going to go after? In fact, there's a question here that's coming in through some of our social media about how do we set our max bids. And that's something that we really talk about in the three stages of due diligence, but they're within that third stage.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, and setting max bids is actually an area where people make a lot of mistakes with tax sales specifically because they're paying more than they should. We tend to set our bid to value ratios here as a percentage of value, and we generally don't pay much more than 30% on most tax sale properties. If something's real special, maybe we'd pay a little bit more than that. But we usually try to keep those percentages way down because again, we're coming in as kind of a wholesaler in most of these cases, and so we're trying to buy in that position. So the lower we pay, the easier it is for us to sell the property, even if we're going to sell it at a discount. We also had Dan mentioned something really helpful. He said Perplexity and Claude are a big help with this, and I think he's onto a really good point here. We've been talking about AI a little bit and some of the ways that it can help us. But there are so many tools that are out there, and I think that there are more ways that can help us than we even realize. Just because you have to explore it more and figure out ways, to utilize it. But once you utilize some of these systems, it's amazing what AI can do.
Yeah, in fact,
yeah, my concern with just kind of throwing AI out there though is that you have to be really good at asking the right questions. Because one thing I do notice, like I've been doing some things, I've found it wrong in a lot of the cases, even doing research, unless you're asking, nearly narrowing down the questions. There's a ton of, there's a ton of, I mean, you can get an idea of like a city data if you want a quick overview by going to like bestplaces.net and research about any city in the county, get an idea of incomes, populations, the real estate market. But I would just say that's the one thing I would caution is that I found, and something Jerome and I have been hacking on the AI side is that you got to be careful that it can be because sometimes it's only pulling sources. I kind of hoped AI was going to pull from like the whole internet, you know what I mean? But it'll
Yeah,
be like
yeah.
citing like three sources or four sources. I'm like, what are you doing?
uh,
You know what I mean?
you know,
That's a Google search.
what's kind of interesting for us is that we've been using AI lately for help with things like letters or listings. Of creating our listing itself and for creating neighbor letters and other things like that. And yeah, we found it can't access certain information. Like for instance, the AI isn't allowed to access the county records. But it could read images that we show. So if we took screenshots of the county records, though, it could read that information to verify things for us. But yeah, I mean, not everything is exact there with it because it does have, it can't access certain things here. But yeah, we found it really very helpful for writing things like letters and stuff. But I don't know if I would trust it on numbers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, exactly like Shade said, with as far as the data, we're still got to verify everything, especially when it comes to that. But as far as writing up letters, a lot of us have a hard time, or especially if you haven't done it before, how do I write up a good listing? And that's really where it can benefit. In fact, that's kind of something we were going through and doing with our students is we were just putting down certain details. We created some different prompts that are available within the form section of the website, but where you can put in those details. So here's one that we wrote up for a neighbor letter. So we took the script that we had and we included that information and it did it in a nice, good format that we can use to go ahead and post or to send pre-foreclosure letters or to put up listings. And so that's where it can really be beneficial is helping you draft those letters and draft those advertisements so that you can turn around and sell and market your property.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
And do you guys see this other question up in the Q&A section? It says, how difficult is it, Jessica asks, how difficult is it to find deals through land bank sites? She's noticed with some, the application requires proposals for how you plan to improve the property. So you can't just simply buy. A lot of those things though, Jessica, it really just comes down to what systems I can do an application with what we plan to improve a property in about 5 minutes because we use with our fix and flip software, we can plug a few things in and it'll already spit out a total rehab budget for us. And so some of that stuff doesn't take as much time. Um, what
Well,
else?
one
What
thing
do
to
you guys
mention
think
is
about buying through land banks?
one thing to mention is as well is that all land banks are different. So we were, I think on the podcast last week we actually did a live land bank review. And we found land banks, that you could acquire land for 10 cents on the dollar. There's other land banks that they're going to have you fill out and do an application like that. And there are other land banks that are going to have some requirement. What they don't want you to do is to buy the property and then not do anything with it. So, they may have you make certain improvements that need to be done over a certain, let's say a 2-year period. And some are going to require, a full plan and rehab within that time frame. So no land bank is created equally. We've got to check the rules for that specific land bank that'll give us an idea of what can be done. But there's investors every single day that are flipping property and doing rehabs from an investor standpoint through the land bank. So there is good opportunity, but they're not all created equal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
some land banks are up in the night. I mean, just straight up like they are not reasonable, and some of them are just like normal. They actually want to sell property, but there are some of them out there that seem like they don't want to sell anything.
or they only want to sell to like people that are buying a property for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is those contingencies. Some of them have a 3 or 6 month waiting before you can buy as an investor. But we did just I got a property under contract from a land bank that we're deciding whether to take on. That easily could um, would be oh, what was it? It was like a 60 unit retirement home. It's under contract. I don't know if we're trying to decide whether to keep it or not, but we're able to put under contract with like very much nothing down for like $350,000. But it needs a lot of work. $2 million, but it'd be a 60 unit assisted living facility, is what you could turn it into.
Whoa.
So, there are deals like that on there. That's a $1 million property as is, but you definitely have to look for the right deals.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, we were surprised a few years ago when we went out to our buying tour. Shade was out there, and they went to go look at some on-market deals because this land bank had listed them through a realtor. And it wasn't until they looked at the contract and realized that this off-market deal or on market deal, excuse me, was essentially a land bank property, but the numbers worked out where there's still good profitability. And one thing about the land banks is a lot of them you'll get a better, cleaner title than you would if you were just buying it through a tax deed auction.
Yeah, that's actually yeah, that's true. That we've noticed that lots of land banks are going through efforts to clear the title of issues here before they sell. It's kind of like an additional service, an additional benefit they're able to offer from buying through them. Is you don't have to deal with straight up tax deed title. In fact, in some cases, there are some land banks that will handle the quiet title stuff for you.
Yeah.
Well, isn't, were you saying, Stephen, that there's even some of the auctions are starting in Georgia are recognizing potentially after they go through the judicial foreclosure, them as like a clean title warranty deed.
Yeah, well, that's what they said as far as Georgia has changed their law, and it's interesting, and that's one thing that is an advantage of being part of the membership or following us, is that we're trying to always look at some of those law changes. And so one thing that's happened within Georgia as it's gone is that some of the counties are doing what's called a judicial foreclosure. So for the non-judicial foreclosure, those are going to have the 1 year redemption period like Georgia's always had. But these properties that they're taking through the judicial foreclosure only have a 60-day redemption period. And in addition to that, like Tom talked about, and this is we're reading this off their website. So I haven't talked to an attorney about this, at least a Georgia attorney to know, but they say it eliminates the need to go through quiet title. So it sounds like whatever judicial foreclosure that they're doing there within Georgia is pretty much cleaning up those titles enough that you can either get a warranty deed or be able to get title insurance on it without going through quiet title.
Yeah, well, and as long as it's insurable, that's all we can, that's all we need. As long as it's insurable for title insurance, we're good to go.
It's interesting to watch. I feel like that more states are changing. I remember when Arkansas had a 2 month redemption period or whatever. Now
Yeah.
it's 2 days, and it was still kind of a redemption state. Now it's pretty much a tax deed state. We're watching
Hmm.
like Colorado change from liens to liens and deeds, and it'll be interesting
Yeah.
to see how. And now Georgia, it's like, but I'm hoping that Georgia sparks if they do this judicial foreclosure thing and do the clean title, they'll start making the other states think about some of that too. Because it really, I
Yeah.
mean, by all intents and purposes, it should be a warranty deed, just like a
Yeah.
mortgage foreclosure.
Yeah. Yeah. It really should. It shouldn't be such a clouded title after the foreclosure like that. But there are actually, what is nice though is that it does seem like counties are recognizing that and kind of working in that direction. Certainly much more so than they were 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and you can always work out deals. Like I know the Arkansas properties, they're doing clearing the title on all of them, and we were able to get it done for quite a bit cheaper per per one because we're doing several at a time. But still, that'll be interesting to see. It's just interesting to see what's going to keep changing. Because I
Yeah.
see more and more states. It seems like more states are going to deeds slowly than just liens.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are seeing the need for deeds at some point in their process. Even if they have liens, there's a need to have, a deed process where a foreclosure can take place, where properties can be issued to new owners, where they can kind of, they can get the process completed. Because liens themselves work to a degree, but ultimately, if you don't pay the taxes, eventually they're going to turn into deed everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and I know we're getting kind of down. We're already past the hour. Is there any final questions out there, you guys, that you want to ask before we start wrapping things up? I'm glad we were able to get, I guess we are live streaming, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, first time,
But
nice.
Yeah, we
yeah,
apologize about the beginning, but I think we figured it out now. So, yeah, the podcast and maybe some of these other trainings here in the future, but definitely the podcast each week we're going to be live streaming. So you can go ahead and join us here live on Zoom, but you can also catch us on our Facebook and YouTube channels.
Yeah, you bet. We're looking forward to doing this in the future.
awesome. Well, guys, let's give it up to Stephen Shade and everything on here today. and I really appreciate you guys all coming out and being a part of this. And definitely, book some time if you need it. Get those things done, and we'll see y'all again here soon. I'm
Yeah,
Yeah,
either
you
at
bet.
some of my trainings or Steve and Shane on their trainings. It's fun when we kind of get to do some of them together, like today.
Yeah. Yeah, you
yeah.
guys have been an awesome group today. We really appreciate all the great questions and participation. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up unless there's anything else you guys want to cover.
No, I think we're good. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody.
All
We
right.
will see
Thanks,
you later.
guys.